18 plus.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Hello, very good morning to you. Welcome along to OTB AM. It's Gilroy and Eoin Sheahan with you all the way through until 10 a.m. this morning. We'd love to hear from you, whatever you're up to this morning, whatever wild and exciting parts of your life you're sharing with the rest of the world on social media. Share them with us. Heaven knows we could do with a bit of excitement. Owen, good morning to you. How the hell are you?
Very well. How are you?
I'm excited. It's another day. It's the middle of the week. What? It's not even the middle of the week. It's only Tuesday. What the hell else would we be doing? But here, you know.
Well, breaking news, and I will perform this morning's public service. Congratulations, everybody. It is Wednesday. It is, in fact, the middle of the week. So
what a breakthrough. I missed a day.
It's in.
Hey, okay, right. It is the middle of the day. I should be excited. This is great. Okay, we can start that again. This is brilliant. We're nearly towards the weekend. Well done.
Yeah.
Are you telling me the truth?
It is great.
Are you telling me the truth? Because if you were only joking, I'd be devastated, Owen. I'm emotionally fragile. I would be devastated.
You accidentally said there a moment ago that it's the middle of the day instead of the middle of the week as well. So it's not, unfortunately. It is the start of the middle of the week. But it's better than being the start of the week. So here we are. It is 7:30 on Wednesday morning. Officially, we can confirm.
This is why people get out of bed and turn on their Alexa and tell her to play OTB Sports Radio at 7:30 every morning. It's for stuff like this, Owen. It's not for the top quality sports guests that we're going to bring their way. And by the way, we have top quality sports guests from all over the world to talk to us about a wild array of different things. But this is why it's this nonsense at the top of the show.
Well, yeah, and a very good morning to everybody, really. This is all we're here for. We can keep just doing timestamps for the next 2.5 hours if that's what people want.
7:32. Well done. We've made it through the first 2 minutes. Right, look, we've got to talk about the big breaking story over the last 24 hours. And this is coming from France, where a French broadcaster has interviewed the French doctor who was involved with Racing and stood Johnny Sexton down for 12 weeks all the way back in 2014 because of a concussion issue. He's been interviewed ahead of the game this week, and he's being quoted now in the papers in Ireland this morning. And the headline that the papers have all gone with is that Sexton suffered 30 concussions over the course of his career. This has led to, as you would expect, a lot of interesting debate in the newspapers about what the role of the IRFU is, what should happen with Sexton at the weekend, and Sexton's due to face the media today. So obviously that's the only thing that he's going to be asked about at the start of his press conference. If he does face the media today, I mean, there's a possibility he might not, but he's scheduled to. So what's going on here, Owen, do you think?
But it's interesting, I'm just after seeing as well that you've got Professor Jean Chazal, who's done an interview with Midi Olympique, saying that if Sexton plays on Sunday, it's sad for him. So you've got two different doctors, basically, in France, speaking publicly on the matter of Johnny Sexton's head injuries. My initial feeling on this was that I feel slightly uncomfortable about this. The first guy you mentioned here, Dr. Jean-Francois Sherman, obviously he's the guy who recommended Sexton being stood down for 12 weeks in 2014. He's got somewhat of an expertise on Sexton specifically, given he was his doctor in 2014, but he hasn't worked with him since. It's been 6 years. What was it, 2015? Sexton left Racing. It's been 6 years at least since he's worked with him. He has used the word if in what he is saying about Johnny Sexton. And he says, I think Johnny Sexton has had around 30 concussions across his entire career. Yes, he has got the phrase doctor or professor in his title, but there is still an element of guesswork about what he is saying here with Johnny Sexton. It's great that concern is being shown. Everybody needs to show concern around HIA. But my initial response was, this is a French doctor being asked about this ahead of an Ireland game this weekend. The doctor must prevent him from playing on Sunday if his tests are disturbed, he said. And the other guy who I mentioned said that it's sad if he plays on Sunday as well, as I said. And it just seems, I don't know, a little bit like, hey, let's throw these things out there because we are French doctors and we are playing Ireland this weekend. And that is unfortunately my initial feeling on this. And like maybe if I think about it rationally, that shouldn't be the way. Maybe their concerns are 100% serious and they should be. And maybe this is just the only reason why they're being brought up is because the hook is the Ireland game. But it just feels to me, I just feel a little bit uncomfortable about these doctors coming out all of a sudden feeling concerned for Johnny Sexton when there could have been so many different opportunities for them at any other stage over the last few years for them to also voice this concern.
I think the point that you're making is encapsulated in that headline in the back of the Indo this morning. Mind games, French medics say Sexton shouldn't play. So I think at the core of that concern is that all of a sudden these doctors have decided to come out this week and speak about this issue. I mean, there's a fairly, I would say, logical counterpoint to that in that last week Sexton came off and didn't come back onto the field of play. I haven't seen it confirmed by the IRFU that he suffered or that he failed HIA. We'll find out, I guess, those details specifically about that. He was going through the return to play protocol. That's what the press conference said yesterday. It was Easterby did the press conference yesterday. So, you know, people are making those assumptions. I didn't see the press releases, so I didn't go and check enough time this morning to check back specifically on that point. But he went off last week. The French media contacted the doctor who stood him down for 12 weeks when he was at Racing ahead of the game that they're playing him this week. So this is the week that you would express that, would be, you know, and I'm not sure that the doctors are involved in some grand conspiracy to unsettle the Irish rugby team the week out from the game. Maybe, look, maybe that does happen in different parts of the world. Perhaps these people are concerned about what they're seeing in rugby as a trend at the moment. And just to take it away from Johnny Sexton, because I know in the past he's spoken in 2018, he found it unbelievably frustrating that people were speculating about the number of concussions he had, particularly when it comes to a head injury not automatically being a concussion, specifically because the insurance companies are looking at this, and then they all have to go and get insurance and talk to the insurance companies, and it, you know, it has a potential long-term ramification for him, and it's his private medical stuff. So to take that away, what's happened in rugby over the last 6 months is that a bunch of players have come forward and said that they're suffering the after effects, like very serious life-altering, life-shortening after effects of playing professional rugby. And playing professional rugby this century, this millennium, like Steve Thompson watches the World Cup in 2003 and can't remember playing in the matches, is like curious to find out what happens and how he's going to play in that match. Like there are fairly catastrophic injuries being suffered by people in the sport of rugby. And last week in the first game of the Six Nations that Ireland played in, there were 5 HIAs. There's like, what is it, 46 players. 1/9 of them go off for HIA. Maybe there are some after the game as well who are feeling the after effects of it. This sport has become brutal. And actually, if doctors are speaking out in the middle of a match week, I know the rush is going to be, the crafty French are at it again. But like, if we can take the individuals out, perhaps the message is this sport got pretty brutal.
This is where I agree with you. I think that if there are two separate things, I think about the Sexton situation and think to myself, he's being very well looked after, more than qualified people all around him. And also, as I think Julien Marchand actually said, nobody else is in Sexton's shoes at the moment. But then there's a second thing here, which you mentioned, which is the wider question around rugby. And like this is obviously the first time all of us had watched Test rugby since the concussion lawsuit came to the fore, what was it, around Christmas time. Of course, we've watched rugby since then. We've watched Pro 14, we've watched Champions Cup, whatever. But there is always a higher intensity about Test rugby. And bloody hell was there a high intensity about that game between Ireland and Wales last Sunday, to the point where you were almost watching it between your fingers as a result of the context of last December, of the concussion lawsuit being brought to the RFU, to the Wales Rugby Union, and to World Rugby. You're thinking to yourself, Jesus, how does this sport actually survive in its current guise over the next little while? The Peter O'Mahony hit wasn't even deliberate, and it was absolutely horrific, like watching a car crash in slow motion. The same with the hit on Gary Ringrose. Again, accidental, like watching a car crash in slow motion. The James Ryan concussion, what did you say, 5 HIAs last Sunday? absolutely incredible tally. And every single time there was a collision, you thought to yourself, this is horrific, absolutely horrific. And I'm certainly watching the sport through a new lens. I shouldn't be. We should all have been watching it through this lens over the last few years. The players got bigger, the tackles got more brutal, and the intensity of Test rugby went to a whole new level. Like, the intensity hasn't just become a new thing this year, but it's become a new thing for me personally, watching it after the concussion lawsuit and hearing the testimony from someone like Steve Thompson, the horrific anecdotal evidence that we're being provided with over the last little while. And there is a whole new way of watching the sport now, which is discomfort. That is the main emotion you have in game while watching these big hits take place. Of course, with the intensity, you have the big moments of enjoyment as a sports fan. But God, there's also a human element to it. And I'm not talking about Johnny Sexton here, for the record. I'm talking about the entire 80 minutes last weekend. Certainly for a lot of the first half, when the players were fresh and the hits were extremely hard and clean. It just felt, God, this is a little bit of a new chapter now. The context matters. And the context that we've seen over the last couple of months is just a grim picture for rugby. And what's happening on the pitch doesn't seem to allay any of those fears.
Yeah, and we're obviously going to be hypersensitive to any of the stories around Johnny Sexton that come out from the French media the week of the match, because the Six Nations is on such a knife edge. Every match is so important. You know, Midi Olympique, their headline is Si Sexton joue dimanche, c'est triste pour lui. If Sexton plays on Sunday, it's sad for him. They've got, is that Shazai? Is that the doctor who's speaking in that one? So obviously a bunch of people have come forward yesterday, and this was on a French, it was at a French radio show that they put the neurologist Jean-François Sheahan on. So, I mean, this is obviously, it has been a story in the build-up to Ireland-French games before, the targeting of Sexton, the super aggressive hits that he has suffered in French matches, and the flabby refereeing around that in instances in the past. It's kind of become one of those pre-match battlegrounds. You think back to Eddie Jones crossing the line when he was expressing concern for Sexton's parents watching the game, and the outcry that there was around that a couple of years back as well. So Sexton's health is a battleground in the build-up to these matches, which I can only imagine if you're Johnny Sexton is unbelievably frustrating, because it's like, I mean, what?
And that's the question. That's my initial feeling when I saw the comments, was this is not too dissimilar to Eddie Jones a couple of years ago. But maybe Dr. Jean-François Sheahan is more qualified than Eddie Jones to at least speak about this. But I still felt initially this is a little bit speculative. But then, for the reasons I just outlined, you can't not take any of this sort of stuff seriously. Like, it's
well, so
I just
even this morning we're kind of, so that was the one piece that was on RMC Sport, which is the radio station, and but there's a piece in Midi Olympique, which is obviously not just a rugby newspaper, but has a massive amount of rugby in it, and that piece where if he plays this week it'll be sad for him, the person saying that is a renowned neurologist who's a former player with Claremont. So look, hopefully Johnny Sexton will address some of these issues today, and maybe he will be past fit to play. Maybe the IRFU will choose not to play him irrespective of that. Maybe he's totally fine, and this speculation is very unhelpful. But we'll get to hear hopefully from him in the next couple of hours or so. It's 7:43 this morning here on OTB AM. We'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180. We're going to talk Manchester United and their cup win last night, and we're also going to talk with one of the Irish outfield players who has become the latest Irish outfield player to go in goals for his team a little bit later on in the show. In the meantime, let me tell you, OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Phil Egan, good morning to you.
How are you doing, Ger? How are you getting on?
Where do we start?
Well, we start with Manchester United. Beam me up, Scotty, is the headline on the back of some of the papers today. Scott McTominay scored in extra time to give United a 1-0 win over West Ham in the 5th round of the FA Cup. So 7 seasons in a row now, United have reached the last 8 of the FA Cup. Got to the semi-finals last season, as they did in the Europa League and League Cup, but they just haven't been able to get to a final under Solskjær. But not the greatest game. Obviously, United rested a few players, ended up bringing most of them on, and they got the job done. And Dublin teenager Mipa Odebeko featured for the Hammers as well. The teenager was brought on and then taken off. Wasn't a great night for him. He was back at Old Trafford, where he had been a youth player at Manchester United before he made the move to West Ham. But I'm sure if you're playing at Old Trafford as a teenager, you have something about you. So certainly an experience he's going to learn from. And in terms of the FA Cup, more action tonight. 4 more fifth-round ties. First up at 5:30, you've got Manchester City, the Premier League leaders, away to Swansea, are doing very well in the Championship. And obviously Conor Howard is part of that since his loan move from Aston Villa. 2 games then at 7:30, Leicester and Brighton, an all Premier League clash. And then Sheffield United face Bristol City. Then at 8:15, Everton against Tottenham at Goodison Park. A clash of 2 former Real Madrid managers as Jose Mourinho and Carlo Ancelotti go head-to-head. More action in the Scottish Premiership tonight as well. Celtic are away to St Mirren. They go into that game 21 points behind leaders Rangers. This is one of 2 games in hand for Celtic. Cardiff now 4 games unbeaten in the Championship under Mick McCarthy. Just 8 points off the playoff places following last night's 2-1 win at Rotherham. Hollywood actors Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney have officially completed their takeover of Wrexham. They've bought the Welsh club, obviously, and have invested £2 million in the National League side. Peter O'Mahony will miss Ireland's next 3 games in the Six Nations. He's been suspended for that red card he picked up against Wales on Sunday. So he missed France, Scotland and Italy. He'd be free to return in the final game against England. World number 1, Novak Djokovic, and defending champion, has just booked his place in round 3 of the Australian Open. Beat American Francis Tiafoe by 3-1. Dominic Thiem, who Djokovic beat in the final last year, also through. Serena Williams is also into round 3. Petra Kvitova and Bianca Andreescu both beaten in the second round today. And Padraig Harrington is withdrawn from this week's Pebble Beach Pro-Am. He's tested positive for coronavirus. The European Ryder Cup captain will now go into self-isolation.
All right, we'll obviously keep an eye on that story and the rest of everything else that's happening, and more from Phil across the day on otbsports.com or on the OTB Sports app. At 7:47, let me tell you what's coming up over the course of the next couple of hours. We've got Mark Lawrenson standing by. We're going to get to him in just 1 second. We'll bring you through the sports pages at 8:05. Michael Doyle is going to talk to us about his heroics. He went into goal after the keeper got sent off last night and kept a clean sheet. John Duggan at 8:35. Matt Lawton is going to talk to us about the how the MTK Daniel Kinahan story is unfolding across the UK. James Coughlan is going to join us at 9:10 for The View from France. And Tiger Woods, the documentary series, now available on Sky. Eoin had seen a screener of it a couple of weeks ago. It is now widely available, so we should probably rebroadcast and podcast those reviews that we did for you. We'd love to hear from you if you've been watching it as well. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Mark Lawrenson, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. You? Yeah,
so look, these cup games, you get to this stage of the cup and you're very, very close. It's touching distance at this point. And yet West Ham obviously feel like the league is so important and they're going so well that they couldn't quite put all of their eggs in the cup basket. I'm sure there was a bit of tension in David Moyes' team selection before he actually decided what to do.
Yeah, I think it's one of those when he probably thought he maybe picked his team strong enough to win the fixture. He'd be probably second-guessing as well the team that Manchester United were going to pick. And just unfortunately for them got it wrong. But, I mean, I think his remit, well, I know his remit at the start of the season because I know him particularly well, it was that, you know, make sure we stay in the Premier League. That's the all-important thing. And while he'll be disappointed, I think privately it'll be right, OK, let's concentrate on the league and let's try and finish in the top 10. I mean, at the start of the season, probably most people would have thought they'd be round about, lower than halfway, most definitely, probably top of a bottom 6. So they've done remarkably well so far, but yeah, they're out now, so they've got to forget about it. They've
done brilliantly, and that's the bit where you wonder if there's part of his mindset going into that match last night going, we're well ahead of where we're supposed to be, and this is a chance for a trophy. I totally understand your gig is your gig. Stay in the league, finish as high as you can. Every point is worth an extra £1 million, which is essentially the same as winning the cup anyway. Business is business. Yeah. And also, I mean, even by the time the cup final, it probably there'll be no supporters, so that takes obviously a lot away from the competition, as we know we saw with Marine, although what they did was brilliant. But yeah, I mean, so if he finished, say, in the top 10, I don't know how many millions it would be, but rather than finish in the sort of 16th place, which they have been doing,
they'll be happy. And I think as well, I spoke to him the other week after. Well, I spoke to him after Souček got sent off actually by Mike Dean, which is a completely another story. And he's just saying to the players that, he said, let's aim for Europe in terms of the league. And if we fall a bit short, we fall a bit short, but we'll still be in a very good position. And I think the thing with Moyes is that he's the type of manager that he just needs time. And I know not necessarily you get any time in the Premier League, but the good thing for him was that the hierarchy at West Ham already knew him, so they knew what he was like. And he started to build a team, and he's just said that the players have been excellent. They've all bought into what they're trying to do. He said the very first thing he was trying to do was make them difficult to beat, which he's done. And now, obviously, they started winning games against good sides. So they've just got to keep going.
On Manchester United then, Mark, Scott McTominay scored again last night. 7 goals and 30 appearances for Manchester United this season. He's starting to add a little bit of attacking potential to his game, attacking evidence to his game. I think that's as many goals as he scored in his previous 84 appearances for the club. Are you now looking at a player that is coming into form slowly but surely, that Manchester United, if they had ambitions to sign perhaps another midfielder this summer, they might actually say, hold on, Scott McTominay is a pretty good starting Premier League midfielder?
Yeah, no, I think he is. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think when he came in at first, obviously massive enthusiasm, then you kind of thought, okay, well, that's obvious. That's something that you have to do. His passing was okay. His work rate was outstanding, as you would expect. But then you're kind of saying, well, does he really influence the game? And the answer to that would have been actually no. But as you rightly say, now he started to get the goals. He's got the confidence, and he's a big boy, and he's big and he's strong, and also normally he has Fred in there with him, which also helps. So I think from United's point of view, he's been an absolute bonus because, as we know, with all the big teams, all the big six, they're more than happy just to go and sign somebody and bring them in. And more often than not, a lot of these young players just do not get a chance. So the fact he's played so many games as well already this season just tells you that he's highly rated by the manager, which has been a bonus for Manchester United.
The assist, I think, then came from Marcus Rashford, and while there have been question marks around his lack of goals or maybe just the lack of killer instinct in front of goal at times this season, he is still putting up good numbers when it comes to his chance creation. Is it just a different Marcus Rashford we have seen this year, Mark? Yeah, I think so. And as you know, with all the things he's done off the pitch as well, and that will have its toll at times because, generally with professional footballers at this level, they've got absolutely nothing to worry about. Come in, train, go home, repeat, play games, win games, repeat. So, yeah, I think so. And I think he's, Rashford's a top player. I think the thing with Manchester United as well is they've played him different positions already this season, wide on the left of a 3 or through the middle on his own or on the right as well. And I just think it's part of his development. And the thing for Manchester United, they've got so many options in terms of the forward players. So Rashford, even if he doesn't score, there's one thing about him. He does aid with the assists. I think defensively as well. I think he's extremely well coached. That was one of the features of Sir Alex Ferguson when he had the team, and players went on loan, and the club that took these young players on loan would come back and say, "Wow." They said they're already, in terms of actual understanding football, ahead of any of the players who've got at their own team. So it's all part of it. And I think, with Manchester United, they do have match winners, and they have plenty of them. And I don't suppose to Ole Gunnar Solskjær really particularly matters who scores the goals and who's playing week in, week out, because apart from the odd hiccup, they're having a good season so far. What
do you make of the progress Solskjær is showing? Is it pointing in the right direction? Is it trending the right way? Yeah. I think it's taken him an awful long time to kind of decide which is his best team, which obviously you see he puts out in the big games. I think Fernandes has been an absolute... he's been brilliant, quite honestly, and I don't say that about too many players in the Premier League when they ever first come in. I think as well, if you're a forward in this Manchester United team and Fernandes is playing, he always looks to pass forward, and he's not frightened to give the ball away by trying actually to play players in. So as soon as he gets on the ball, the likes of Martial, Greenwood,
Rashford, all these kind of players are sort of running, thinking, I'm going to get it, he'll deliver it. His passing is brilliant alongside with everything else. So, no, he's done really, really well on Solskjær. And he said, I think, at the start of the season, if you remember, lost at home to Crystal Palace 2-1, lost at home to Tottenham 6-1. And, I mean, you'd expect him to say this anyway, but he was saying, look, we're not ready. We're not ready. We haven't really had a pre-season. This is going to take a lot longer than other teams. And he was absolutely, totally right, and has proven so far. But he needs to win something, because if you're a Manchester United manager, as David Moyes, if you're a Manchester United manager and you don't win anything, it pales into insignificance when you see all the honours, obviously, that Fergie won in his time as manager there.
That's why the cup game last night was actually really important from Solskjær's perspective. And it's funny that he's definitely also trying to juggle when to pick the team, when not to pick the team, when to pick the players that he's going to rely on for the rest of the season as well. So, we don't think they're going to win the league at this point. It looks like it's Manchester City's league.
Yeah.
But if you're United, are you confident enough that team is going to carry into the top four, and therefore actually the cups are the priority now? Or how do you measure these two things?
I think it's both. You try and win as many games as you possibly can. I mean, they have very, very few injuries, certainly at the moment. So why not, sort of concentrate on every single trophy in terms of the division, or obviously the cup competition that you're in, and give yourself a bigger chance as possible. So I think that'll just be the way they are. They'll definitely finish in the top four. I think we've seen already some strange results throughout the course of the season. Up until last weekend in the Premier League, wasn't there more away victories than home victories, which is unheard of. So he'll just be basically, excuse me, and it is true, especially with the way you are at the moment. It is one game at a time. Try and pick your best side as often as possible, with the odd exception, maybe one or two players who you might just rest for a game, thinking the legs are a little bit tired. But no, he just got to push on, because he's under pressure because of Sir Alex Ferguson, because of the fact that Mourinho, Moyes, etc. didn't do particularly well, or didn't do anything like Sir Alex Ferguson, which is difficult to do anyway. So, yeah, and I think you don't want to be an ex-Manchester United manager who had all that money to spend and all those good players and all the backing of the club, and not actually win a competition, because I think you'd be branded as a failure, which is the price. Basically, that's the price of success at that football club. It
feels like David Moyes is kind of finally shaking off that Manchester United period.
Yeah. He was, I mean, I know him really well and stuff, and he doesn't live too far away from me when obviously he's not in London. And he was just miffed at the fact that when he took the job, first day, Evra came to him and said, look, I've done this deal to go and play in Italy, so I'm off at the end of the season. Rio Ferdinand's legs were going. I think that was by his own admission. Patrice Evra said as well he'd been told by the football club that he could leave in the summer. So he said three of the back four, who have all been outstanding players, were basically on his first day were saying, well, nice to meet you, good luck, but we're off at the end of the season. So, and bearing in mind what I told you before about Moyes, is that he's a builder. He's a builder of teams, and it takes time. So, yeah, it is what it is, isn't it? I mean, you just got to get on with it. But the thing about Manchester United is, when you finish whatever you're doing, when you finish coaching and even playing and stuff, and the fact you're involved at Manchester United is fantastic. And Fergie picked him, didn't he? Which was even better for Moyes.
What really impressed me over the last period of time is that he seems to have gone off and travelled around Europe and spent time understanding the scouting systems and the analytic systems of all of these, and not just the big clubs. Like he was willing to go and talk to some of the smaller clubs to see what they were doing and how they were being innovative. Well,
because the thing about him is he obviously started off at Preston, what Championship now, so he knows what it's like at that level. He knows that you need every bit of help that you can get. But also, he worked for UEFA, so when the Champions League was on, etc., he'd be going to games, and he'd be kind of discussing tactics. He'd sort of write these plans for UEFA about the way that teams played, some teams that played a little bit different, all those kind of things. And he is just no stone left unturned. and he's got lots of contacts in the game. And what he's very good at, actually, and he's very trustworthy generally, is spending your money if you're the owner of the football club, because he buys a certain player who's not quite the finished article and thinks obviously he can work on him and make him better. And with due deference to him at West Ham United, that's what he's done. He took the boy Bowen from Hull for, I think it was about 20 million quid. And I remember having a conversation with him, and he said to me, "Have you seen him?" I said, "I've seen him a few times. I saw him play at Preston a few times against them." I said, he looks a good player." He says, "Well, I'm not quite sure if he's got the pace to play in the Premiership," and he's a bit like that. He does dilly and he does dally at times, but when he makes his decision, and Bowen's done extremely well for them. If you think about Souček as well, that's another really good signing of his. He'll get it right, and as I say, the owners can trust him with their money. It's very, very easy to spend someone else's money, and then you get the sack and you walk away and you come up with a myriad of excuses. But he spends the money for the football club like it's his own money, and don't forget, he's Scottish.
What did you make of Jurgen Klopp killing the poor Israeli TV reporter live in front of a television audience and now an internet audience of tens of millions of people the other day? You can just see with Jurgen Klopp at the moment. It's not a good time to go up and ask him for a favour, is it? So, look, I think the problem with Jurgen is just very much what you see is what you get. And I've been down to the training club to the training ground a few times, and the number of kind of demands and requests on managers now in the Premier League is just absolutely nuts. It's not just Liverpool. It's certainly all the top six. It's just mad. And occasionally he loses it. You can see that in him. And I think that's part and parcel of his makeup. And I think that's why players want to play for him, because they know when they're winning and everything, and he's great, and his communication skills are excellent. But I know, and I've seen it, that he gives it to the players when he thinks that they need to give it. He's under a bit of pressure. But I think the thing with Liverpool is it's a good thing in many ways now, because they can just forget about ambitions of winning the league and just start playing again. And I think the other thing with them as well, I was just saying the other day to somebody, say, look, they've had to cover for Van Dijk and for Gomez, etc. But I think now's the time where basically he's got to pick his best midfield, and we know what the front three would be generally, and just say to him, right, boys, let's just go out, let's get back to the good old days of pressing, etc., and let's spend most of the match in the opposition's half, therefore making chances and scoring goals. And I'd play one of the young kids now, like Phillips, who came in and did absolutely nothing wrong for me, and he's probably the manager thought the game was a bit too big for him at the weekend. Just give somebody like him a run. The new boy they signed from Schalke, Kabak as well. And what's the worst thing that can happen? They're not winning games. I don't know what it is in the last 10, but the record is really, really poor. So go back to out making your strength again. Take Fabinho out, put him in midfield. Take Henderson out and put him in midfield, and just start winning football matches again. I do think that sometimes in football, the way it is now, we kind of overanalyze it. But basically, if you looked at Liverpool, from midfield going forward, all those players were unbelievable last year, and now they've been chopping and changing. And I think that would make a difference. It's one of those which is, come on, boys, let's go out and play. There's no pressure. Let's go out and enjoy ourselves. And they'll start winning games again because they've got some outstanding players.
If we're seeing a dark version of Jurgen Klopp in front of a microphone after the game, you say that what you see is what you get with Jurgen Klopp. It's probably what we're seeing in the dressing room as well. That probably isn't necessarily an environment where players can play with that freedom that you mentioned there.
What in terms of? Are you saying in terms of what he says to the players?
Yeah, it definitely seems that his mood has soured quite a bit over the last couple of months, whereas the happy Jurgen Klopp, I'm sure, was one of the reasons why the players were like, I love this environment and I can express myself. Yeah,
we ain't seen his pearly white teeth on too many occasions, aren't we? Unless he's gnashing. But listen, there's one thing about all the players at that football club. They absolutely, totally respect him because he's, I think, to a man, all the players that he had when he took over, excuse me, all the players that he's brought in, he's made them better players. So you don't suddenly have no respect for your manager, it's just a little bit more difficult then, because when you're losing games, because everyone tends to doubt everything. They doubt themselves as players, they doubt the manager, etc. There's no problem there with the players, because the players absolutely love him. It's just the fact, if you think about it, I mean, the last 3 seasons, they've been absolutely outstanding. Obviously won the Premier League last year and came within a whisk at one point of the year before with Manchester City. And I think sometimes with managers as well is that players kind of sit there and think, same old, same old, same old in terms of what they say. But when you're there for 3, 4, 5 years, it will be that. And that's where, and I go back to Sir Alex Ferguson, which is he was very, very clever insofar as just turning players over, bringing new players in. They're always your own players. And it's a massive difference at football that if the team or the squad that you can pick from, if you're the manager, you bought nearly all of them in because they have that extra respect for you, because you've actually decided to pay the money and bring them into the football club. I've seen Jurgen at Melwood. Obviously they've now gone to Kirby, but and I've watched them train. And while it's intense, they also have a laugh. And the thing with him, and he has got such a good personality. He encourages that with everybody. And you saw Milner when he got taken off. Well, it was at West Ham, wasn't it? And questioned it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You don't want robots, but he's kind of got the personality and the acumen to deal with all those kind of things. So I don't see that being a problem. Listen, if you said tomorrow that Jurgen Klopp walked away from Liverpool, all the top teams in the world will come and manage us because he is that good.
Yeah, and they'd be devastated. Are you anyway concerned about what's happening at the moment? Do you think Liverpool can get back to being as good as they were last year, next year?
Good question. Last year, next year, I would like to think so. It looks like that. I think Van Dijk will play before the end of the season, and because they've named him in the squad, haven't they? So I think apparently he's obviously coming back. Jota's probably only maybe a week away. Might even be involved this weekend. Yeah, I don't see why not. And I think it's like anything. Recruitment, I think. So your head of recruitment at any Premier League football club now is the second most important job in the building after the manager. Because if you get that wrong, then obviously you might suffer for kind of a year, 18 months, 2 years. But the guy, Michael Edwards, has done a magnificent job at Liverpool. So my answer, my very long-winded answer to your question is yes, I do think so.
Just one last thing I wanted to put to you, Mark. It's on one of the stories of the week. It is Phil Foden shooting the lights out against Liverpool on Sunday. Pep Guardiola's reaction has been interesting. He said he has to be calm and to understand that tough periods are going to come. It depends if he's humble on his love for the game, the expectations, and we will see if he can handle it. It's fairly tough love from Pep Guardiola. Is that what you want to see if you're a Manchester City, if you're an England fan? Yes,
absolutely, totally. I mean, you can only talk about, as an ex-player, you can only talk about your time in the game. That's the way Liverpool were. And when you think of some of the quality of some of the players that they had, the likes of, Dalglish, who was a genius, and Rush and Souness and all those kind of guys, that's the way it is. You'd come in and, you'd win games 4-0, beat Norwich at home 4-0 or something, and you come into the dressing room, there's no whooping, there's no hollering, and somebody like Joe Fagan or Ronnie Moran would say, well, he said, well done, boys. He said, but to be fair, he said, my local team, Crosby, would have beaten Norwich today, and that's what it's all about. It's all about the fact that you're only as good as your next game, and then therefore you worry about. So you're only as good as your last game, and therefore you worry about the next. And I think Pep, I get the impression that I think he thinks that Foden's is a bit like his love child, isn't he? I think so with him, and he knows the outstanding ability he's got, and if he keeps progressing, how good he can be. And he's just saying to him, look, aim for the sky, and if you just fall a little bit short, you'll still be an outstanding footballer. And I think Foden obviously seems to be quite a sensible boy. He's just got fantastic ability, and he's lucky he plays in a team that wants to play football all the time, which will only improve his game.
Is football coming home? Are England going to win the Euros this year, Mark?
Who? England?
Yeah.
No. We always have this over here with England. It's just that thing. They just get built up. You know, they win a couple of games. Listen, in the World Cup in Russia, who did they actually beat? I know I don't need to convince you, but I was saying to people, who did they actually beat? Not really an outstanding side. All as soon as they played an outstanding side, i.e. Belgium, they go out. But that's just the way it is with England. You know, as a football team, they expect to win absolutely everything, and end up winning nothing. Remember the World Cup in South Africa? They had the worst record of anyone after the first two games. They just don't perform, I don't think, at any level because of the pressure on them generally.
Right. I don't think many people expected them to do that well. Maybe I'm misremembering, Mark, but I do think there was an appreciation at the time that England team wasn't great in Russia, and Gareth Southgate almost slightly overachieved by getting to a semi-final, whereas this time he's got a much better squad.
I would agree 100% with that in terms of much better squad. But the teams they had to play against, when you look certainly in the league basis at the start, they were ordinary generally. I mean, apart from Belgium, they were quite ordinary. It's just the way the press are over here. That, you know, they have all these players, and they'll be talking about Rashford and all those kind of players, and as you say, Foden going into these games, Grealish, all these kind of players. They all can't play. That's the first thing, and that's the first problem that Gareth Southgate has is to find his best team, which I think's really difficult when you're an international manager, because you only play so many games. Friendlies generally are an absolute total waste of time. So then you build in the expectation level, because they're all playing in the Premier League, and everybody goes to the Premier League and goes, oh, this England team, have you seen them? You know, they can do this, they can do that. I'll ask you a question. When was the last time England went to a competition actually everybody thought they might have a chance of winning it? And I want to say everybody, people away from England, looking objectively at the team that they had and the squad that they had.
Is it 96? Is it that far back?
There you go. You've answered my question for me, because I can't remember last week.
I think it might be that far back when you had Sheahan in the team and it was a home tournament, and so therefore everybody was like, well, this guy's pretty good. So look, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. There's a lot of good young talent bubbling up, and
well, the other thing is it going to happen?
That's a good question.
Is it? Well, is it? I don't. Is it going to happen? I mean, and this was Platini's idea, wasn't it, to play in so many different cities, which sounded great at the time, and obviously you weren't to know about the pandemic, etc. But even then, you're kind of thinking, you know, I've been to nearly all these competitions over the last 25 years, and one of the things is it's always in one country, or maybe occasionally in the Euros, it might be in two, you know, double cities in terms of hosting it. But there's a real feeling about, you know, it's in these countries, everybody gets behind it. But there's so many games in so many different places, you're kind of thinking, what is it? And I'm like, UEFA and FIFA, they have to do something every single major competition to try and change it. It works. It works without all this. We remember fantastic Euros with fantastic World Cups. Just leave it alone. But they won't. And of course, the bottom line is it's all about money.
Yeah. Mark, great to have you with us this morning. Thanks a million. Pleasure. That was brilliant.
No worries.
That's Mark Lawrenson giving us a range of different talking points and things to think about there. 0879 180 180 is the number. It's nearly 14 minutes past 8, and it's Wednesday, the 10th of February. You're very welcome along if you've just joined us. We've loads more to come. We're going to chat with Matt Lawton and hear about the UK reaction to Daniel Kinahan's statement on TalkSport on Monday. James Coughlan is going to join us from France to talk rugby. Up next, we're chatting to Notts County and former Irish midfielder Michael Doyle about his heroics in goals last night.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio. Off the ball.
Who's your number 9 for the Six Nations?
John Cooney. For me, he's the one who can provide the most all-round approach to rugby that I think we require in order to change our overall tempo of attack. Do I think Murray is capable of it? I'm not sure anymore.
Off the ball. Weeknights from 7 and weekends from 1.
This is OTB Sports Radio. Live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
Check out the Boyle Sports app today for details on which football match is getting the no-lose treatment this week. Plus, study the form with our Racing Post Spotlight before watching the action with free live streaming on all UK and Irish horse races. See the Boyle Sports app for full T's and C's. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie 18+.
Calling all builders, joiners, plasterers and dryliners. Need advice on the right materials for the job? Consider it done. You need them on site and in your hand. Consider it done. You want access to over 10,000 products from the leading construction brands without having to start up the van. Consider it done. There's another way of doing things. eTag. We talk with you to solve your problem and deliver what you need directly onto site. No second guessing, no seconds wasted. Click etag.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Right, sure, I'll come back to OTB AM this Tuesday morning. If you want to get in touch, 0879 180 180 is the number, and that is by WhatsApp or text, and you can do that there. I'm going to run you through what's on the sports page. So we'll start with otbsports.com. The GPA is revolutionising how county players use their skills in life. This is a piece that Arthur James O'Dea has done on the back of just conversations that have been distilling over the last while with various hurlers and footballers and the influence of the GPA. Is David De Gea on his last warning at Manchester United? And then Tiger, the many sides to Tiger Woods, with Armin Ketty and Peter O'Mahony handed a 3-game suspension. So Peter O'Mahony going to be back just in time for the end of the Six Nations. We'll see if they decide to pick him. The Irish Independent, their back page headline, we've already brought you this a little bit earlier on. Mind games, French medics say Sexton shouldn't play, and it's medics plural. It's kind of got to that stage where Midi Olympique had somebody and RMC Radio had somebody, and they're both essentially saying the same thing, and that's the headline on the top of the Examiner. French neurosurgeon was worried if Sexton returns on Sunday, and now is the time for leaders to emerge. That's the piece from Donal Lenihan there as well. So we got lucky as the back page of the Irish Daily Mail headline. Ole Gunnar Solskjær relieved his United sneak extra time win. And Zebo, I'd love to rejoin Munster. I'll decide next week. You'd like this, obviously, Eoin? You want Simon Zebo back?
I think it'd be a huge positive for sure. I think obviously you've just spent every week over the last couple of years really kind of looking at how good he's been in Paris, and the real hope now is that if he comes back just to bring that form back to Ireland again, the fear is that unfortunately we missed a lot of really good Simon Zebo, and unfortunately there's going to be a finite amount of really good Simon Zebo. But I think really right now, if you could take him, he'd be close to starting, if not a guaranteed starter on the Ireland team, because he's continued to be brilliant. And this is really exciting. If this happens, it's phenomenal news. And I don't think anybody could argue otherwise. I do think that the rules possibly could have been relaxed to allow him in. I would always rate him really highly. But you can see why it hasn't been the case. But maybe things with COVID changes everything. Who knows how the contract situation is going to end up here in Ireland over the next little while. In fairness, I know that the Premiership teams and I know that the top 14 teams aren't exactly doing brilliantly as a result of COVID either. So it's not like that they're going to be able to escape it by just leaving Ireland, all the good players, and get drastically better contracts elsewhere. But still, maybe things change anyway over the next little while. Yeah.
Okay. So he's saying, I'm very close to making a decision. There will be a lot going into that. I think I'll settle all of that next week. So that he said going back to playing Thomond would be special. It'd be incredible to go back. I'd really love to do it. And also talks about playing in the World Cup being very attractive. So we could do with Zebo. He'd be in the team, you'd think, for sure. The London Times back page headline: Root hailed Anderson the greatest. Jones refuses to drop Farrell. So Eddie Jones is talking about Owen Farrell. He's been a highly consistent, highly successful player for us. Like a number of players on Saturday, he wasn't at his best. He's an outstanding player, and like any outstanding player, they can have a game where they're not at their best. Is that a reason to drop the player? I wouldn't think so. So he's not getting dropped. Back page of the Irish Sun. Magic of the cut. Super sub Scott is Ollie's hero because he got a haircut, you see. Long way to go, foe. It's Pep Guardiola's warning to Phil Foden and going to peter out. Peter Mahoney has been banned from Ireland's next 3 games in the Six Nations, and also Porrick Harrington out with COVID at the moment as well. The Irish Daily Star, beam me up Scotty. Scott McTominay fires United into quarters. Peter given 3 games suspension. You're met by armed police and put in your room. You don't go out for 14 days. So Colin O'Riordan is back after his GAA heroics in Australia and raring to go ahead of the start of the new season. The back page of The Guardian is just an ad. They've got the cricket. England beat India. Root wants England to build on famous victory over India. And Guardiola tells Foden to stay humble and become a great. You'd be worried, I suppose, if Guardiola wasn't saying stay humble. That would be, you know, like he's been around great talent. He's seen great talent wasted, and he's seen great talent literally fulfill all of the potential in, you know, a bird's eye view of exactly what happened with Messi. So our best is yet to come, warns Root. That's the Telegraph. And Scotcha, back page headline of the Mirror. Harry sidelined after a positive COVID-19 test. Do we really call Pádraig Harrington Harry? Does anybody call? Is that a thing we do in Ireland? Or we refer to Pádraig Harrington Harry? Is it? I don't. I've never seen it. Have you seen it?
No. I presume, what is that? A main headline? Maybe there's just a lack of characters available, and you need to just shorten the surname. Didn't somebody call you Gilly once upon a time?
No.
I guess it's probably along the exact same lines.
No. Ireland's lack of succession planning around number 10 is an indictment of the system, says Gordon Darcy, who is returning to his theme about David Nucifora. Where is it going? There's a few good lines in this about the performance director has had 7 years to avoid what we are currently witnessing. Nucifora put the coaching ticket together. Farrell presumably picks the team. We know from Nucifora's fascinating press conference late last year that he's not focusing on the 2023 World Cup, nor is he losing a wink of sleep about the amateur game. So the priority is 2021. How's that going? The situation Ireland find themselves in is down to management. From the top down, David Nucifora to Farrell, the professional structures were supposed to ensure this mess did not occur. And how long does the Australian plan to stay in his position of power? When will Ireland's lack of a long-term strategy be explained? Ireland's collapse in 2019 was shocking for everyone, and stumbling from one disaster to another in 2020 came with plenty of legitimate excuses. But what now? That's Gordon Darcy, always worth a read in the Irish Times. And he's been like a dog with a bone when it comes to Nucifora. So, and he's pointing out the difference between Emile Ntamack, who is 21, and Harry Byrne, who's 21. And the difference is that Ntamack got fast-tracked because the French decided they were going to make sure that they were going to have a chance of winning the World Cup with players who played loads of games. Joe keeps pointing out 28 games left, or 26 games that Ireland have left before the start of the World Cup. When you think about it, that's not a lot of games. And so, look, we'll come back to this a little bit later on, because the more rugby to come with James Coughlan on the show in about 40 minutes' time. In the meantime, though, the Republic of Ireland obviously don't have that many goalkeepers playing first-team football. Maybe they should be looking at what happened with Notts County last night. I'm delighted to say Michael Doyle is on the line. Ireland's newest goalkeeping sensation. Michael, how are you?
I'm not too bad. I don't know about that.
What happened, and how much did you enjoy that?
Probably enjoyed it more once we went at the stoppage time, to be honest with you, when we were 3-0 up, because I knew at half time we were 3-0 up, and I was going to the toilet and I was just thinking to myself, please just win this game, you know, don't have a lot to do, lads. Because I know what it's like when you go on goal. It's hard in the sense that you get peppered with a few shots, you're in trouble, you know, if they're not straight at you. So I was a bit nervous.
So what time was it, how far into the match was the goalkeeper sent off?
We were only about 10 minutes. What was it? We were 73 minutes I ended up in goal for, so it was a long period. We started quite well. We were fortunate enough for us, we were 1-0 up, and keeper got a back pass and he put his foot in it, and he just got into 2 Moyes, and their lad kind of came out of nowhere and closed him down. So to be fair, the keeper kind of 2-footed him in a sense. He got the ball, and it was just, you know, basically it was dangerous play. He didn't really hurt the lad. You know what the game's like now. You know, he sort of lunged in, and the lad's he's made the most of it and got sent off and give a penalty. So I walked over and said, "Oh, bloody hell, this is going to be a long night. 10 men who," and then I just thought, "Oh, Jesus, we've no one on the bench. We've no keeper on the bench," because in our league you're only allowed 5 subs, and the gaffer, our manager, he usually he usually doesn't put a goalkeeper on the bench because the chances of that are very slim. What happened, and so that was really the start of it, you know. Yeah.
How long is that conversation? Who's going in goals? Are you automatically the designated sub goalkeeper, or what happens?
Well, what happened was at the start of the season, before the start of the season, he texted me and just said, will you ask the lads who, you know, there's a lot of games we're not going to go and goal. We're not going to have a sub-keeper on the bench, so can you just ask the lads who'd volunteer to go and goal? So straight away, I said myself, and there's another Irish lad there from Limerick, Damon McCrory, both of us sort of play Gaelic, so both of us were like, yeah, we'll do it. And a couple of the big centre-halves and that, and I'd said to the manager, but he just said no problem, not ever thinking you'd ever really need to use it. So once that we'd gone down to the 10 men and realised we didn't have keeper, I said to the big striker, I said, go over and ask the gaffer who he wants to go and goal. So he came back down and goes, oh, Doyle, and he said, you. I was like, oh, no. I was thinking, yeah. But he was like, no, you don't go and goal. The striker was like, we'll need your experience and this and that. So this lad from Portugal, he's a good lad like Ruben, he was like, oh, I'll go in. And I was thinking, no, we can't put you in goal, like, you know, without being disrespectful. I was thinking, we can't put you in goal. But then I was thinking, yeah, all right, you go and goal. So he started kitting up. So I just thought I'll run over to the manager just to see what he's thinking formation-wise. And I said, look, Ruben's going to go and goal. I said, you know, I know you probably want me, but a couple of lads had said, no, me stay out. And he's like, no, you go and goal, just do this and that. And I said, right, no problem. I said, as long as you're okay. So I knew they had a penalty there from that point, so I just thought I'm just going to take as long as I want here, because the lad's the longer I make him wait for a penalty, it starts putting doubt in your mind and that. So I'd have to say I took about a good 5-6 minutes to get ready to get in goal, you know.
And what happened when he took the penalty?
Well, I actually got changed over near the dugout, put the kit and that on the walk down, and the ref was like, right, hurry up. And I had the towel and that in my hand, like I was ever going to use it in the water, and walk behind the goal and start snooping about, like checking out the area. And, you know, just really make him take his time. And I kind of looked, he was laughing at me, so I started talking to him. I was behind the goal at the net, like, and banging my feet off bloody steel posts and that, like keepers do. I was just thinking of anything to slow it down. And I went into the nets, and I then put the towel in the back of the net, and I could hear one of them lads saying, I bet you can't even reach the crossbar, look at the size of him. So it was a good old laugh. And I jumped in goal, and the lad was lined up ready to go, so he started backing up. So I then jumped out of the goal and walked up to the penalty spot and says, that's not on the spot. And the ref was like losing the head. He was like, I'm telling you now, get in goal or I'm going to book you. I was thinking, he knew he's made a massive decision already, sent him up. He ain't going to book me. So I'd asked the goalkeeping coach previously, what will I do on the penalty? Like, where will I go? What side? Where does he shoot? And he's like, look, go to your right. Go to the right. So I just went to me right, and fortunate enough, the ball's gone to me right, but it's hit the post and come back out to him. So it was a massive bit of luck, and that had a big part in the game, them missing the penalty, because we are 1-0 up down to 10 men and they've missed the penalty. It played a big part in it, you know.
That's mad.
It was when I was in goal, I was thinking, what will I bloody do here, like, you know. I didn't have a clue, you know, when you're younger and you jump in goal and it's a bit of a mess about in the park. But I actually felt like that kid, you know, in goal, when you're in the park and you're watching kids football playing, you've got the smallest player in the pitch in goal, and I think he looks bloody tiny in that goal. That's what I felt like, you know.
It's like you said there a few minutes ago that you could say something that was coming directly at you, or you just stand in the way. Well, that is just patently untrue. There is video evidence of you making a pretty good save of that effort. I think it's in the second half. There's a goal low to your left, and you've got to make a pretty good stop on that situation.
Yeah, to be fair, that was in the first half. Funny enough, we were there. They had a couple of scrambles and a few saves to make. Like, don't get me wrong, nothing major in the sense of, you know, pulling out at the top corner, a few down low and getting good hands on them. And but But yeah, as I say, it was that one again. More me outfield instincts came probably. I think that was the one where I flew out and closed the angle down, and I kind of came out feet first. So I had a couple of little things like that, and another one in the second half where a cross came in. And naturally, as a goalkeeper, the instincts were to fly out and dive on top of it. Well, I flew out and 2-footed it away in the second half, you know. So it was whatever needs possible, you know.
It was also pretty important that you did tell Ruben Rodriguez not to go in goal.
Well, the manager said that, you know. So, yeah, as I say, look, I got to be totally honest, you know, the few catches and things like that, and you know, I said it last night with GAA, you know, playing the Gaelic when I was younger, it did come in, you know, probably being able to catch a ball and things like that and knowing how to catch it came in massively. But you know, the lads in front of me, we ended up winning 3-1, and you know, to be fair, the outfield players were absolutely brilliant. You know, they put a right shift in and played for one another, and you know, I didn't have a majorly over lot to do, which was great for me.
That's class.
He scored the winner though, didn't he?
Ruben scored. Yeah, he got a fantastic second goal, and he was, every time we scored or we scored, he'd be running up to me celebrating. So it was brilliant on his behalf, and as well, I was walking out at half time and I said, "See, there you go. There's no way I would have scored that goal you scored." So, you know, says, thank God you didn't go in goal. So brilliant, you know.
What happened with their 91st minute goal, and how disappointing was that?
It was, you know, they did a bit of a, you know, a lot of bodies around the ball in the edge of the box, and the ball just came to one of their lads quite late on, and I could see him, and there was a bit of a gap, and I haven't seen it back, but I thought he just side-footed from outside the box, kind of. It didn't look a great strike, and kind of went in, and I was thinking a goalkeeper would have easily got that, you know. And when they talk about goalkeepers having good feet and that, I was probably on the line. I probably should have been out and moved my feet and, you know, got a good strong hand to put it out for a corner, but maybe I'm analysing it too much.
I think you'll be forgiven for that one. It was a big win, Notts County. All of a sudden, now you're back in the, I think, is it 4th or 5th in the table, well in the hunt for a playoff place, and not that far behind automatic.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've got 4 games in hand, and everybody knows it's a crazy season, and certainly at our level, I think you know, games are getting called off every other week with COVID, and you don't know if the season's gonna get called off or not. It's just a bit mind-boggling what's going on at times. But you know, our lads, I think the hardest thing for our manager at the minute is telling lads when games are called off, and not the disappointment, you know. But on the football side of it, you know, we've got a really good momentum going, and we're flying, and we're not even halfway through the point of the season yet, so we're in a great place. I think we're gonna come really strong as a team, and results like last night with what happened and the circumstances, it's only going to benefit us as a team, you know, to come through something like that. So I think it's we're in a great place, you know, and I think, you know, the club we are, we certainly need to be getting back into the Football League.
How did you end up at Notts County? How long are you there?
Yeah, I'm there 2 years now. I was at Coventry, and I wasn't really playing, and there was a chance of going on to the coaching staff at Coventry and looking at maybe being a player coach, and finishing 2 years ago and being a coach, and the opportunity basically come up to go to Notts County, where they were in a you know, 10 points from safety in League Two, big relegation battle, and it was him and Han and whether to go, and you know, location wise, it was giving me an opportunity to play again, and it was, you know, it was very close to me home, so it was that's basically how it came about. I decided to take the jump, and unfortunately we came quite close, didn't stay up, and you know, I didn't really want to leave the club with, you know, going out of the Football League. They're a longer serving club, and there was a lot of circumstances with ownership changing, and there's a chance the club were going to liquidate. So I wanted to stay and be able to help the club, you know, try and get back into the Football League, and then see where we go from there. And you know, 2 years later now, I'm still sort of playing, but hopefully we're going to do it this year, and we'll see what happens then.
Are you obviously thinking about coaching? If you were already thinking about coaching 2 years ago, is that, people might be unfamiliar, you're 39 at this stage, so there's definitely the back nine of your playing career anyway.
Definitely. Look, no doubt about it, you know. But yeah, certainly coaching's, you know, I'm definitely looking to make that next step. But at the same time, I did think, you know, this was going to be my last year, but I feel great, you know, I feel fit, and, you know, regards like GPS numbers and that, I'm always up the top with you know, every game. I never miss training, and you know, I play every game. I don't need to miss games. So, you know, the fitness, again, I've been very fortunate that, you know, with it, and I probably thought this year, oh yeah, this will be it. But I just think it's stupid for me to say, put myself in that bracket, because I don't feel like I want to retire, and I don't know if I'm going to. So I'm not going to, you know, be one of them of start like, you know, I feel good, and my age isn't affecting me. You know, my body's never let me down, and I think as soon as the body starts letting you down when you get into your 30s, you do automatically start thinking, right, I maybe need to retire. But my body has been it's been great. It's worked brilliant for me, you know.
Yeah, and like, obviously loads of players are playing on much later now than they were 10 years ago, because the science has moved on and the fitness and nutrition has moved on, and when to rest, all that kind of stuff. So you could definitely have a while longer. Just in terms of management and coaching, like, people might be a little bit unfamiliar with your career journey, but you've, like, all the way back to when you were a kid playing, you were in Denmark for like 20 odd games playing football there. The amount of players and managers who you've played with who are in very senior positions in the game at the moment, it's like a who's who of people in football.
Yeah, again, look, I've been very fortunate to work with some brilliant people and play at some good clubs, and yeah, as I say, it's one of them. Hopefully, when it comes to it, you know, that they're always there for you to lean on, and you know, advice and anything you need. And again, even the manager now I'm working with, Neil Ardley, he's been brilliant to me, treats me great, and they kind of lean on you as well for your experience, and it benefits me and it benefits them. We can all help each other. So as I say, I've really last probably 5-6 years of my career taught about coaching and learning, and to be fair, I've worked with some great managers the last 5-6 years, and Paul Cook, who was previously a Sligo, he was absolutely brilliant. Mark Robbins, Neil Ardley, and you know, they're all sort of modern day managers, and you know, learning about the game tactically, and you know, training and the methods to use. It's and again, even last night with us going down to 10 men, usually it's getting, you know, 4-5, getting everybody behind the ball. But our manager switched formation, went to a diamond, left one up top, and just little things like that, learning about how things are working when you get to my stage of your career. There's probably not a lot of lads were looking at what we were doing, but you know, the manager had said to me what he's doing, and I took it on board, and it worked great. So it just gives you them little nuggets if you ever do come into that situation and you're on a coaching staff, what can work.
Maybe playing a few games in goal would also elongate your career.
Well, that's it, you know. As I say, the amount of texts and stuff I had last night about ending up in goal, it was you know, bloody. One of the lads in the interview said to me last night, "What is it with you and Duggan?" And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "Well, last year you scored from the halfway line against them, and then you got sent off, and now you've ended up in goal." And I said, "Bloody hell, you're not wrong, you know." It's I've had an eventful time against them. What was the GA club that you played with as a kid? Yeah, I played with St Mark's in Tala, where I grew up, you know, and as I say, very fortunate, you know, my brothers and things like that. I always played GA all the way up till I was 18, till I went to Celtic. I was playing GA and I loved it, you know, but yeah, I never thought I'd have to use it and it'd come in, you know. I think there's that bit, and every Irish player that you play with over here that have played a bit of GA, they love getting the gloves on after training the odd time and having a mess about. But I was never really one of them, because every time I went goal, I always felt absolutely tiny, you know. So it was, yeah, as I say, I didn't really think about it, but when I came home last night, I was thinking, bloody hell, like, I've played in goal in a professional game now as well. It was funny, you know.
you were in Ireland squads around the early parts of the noughties, so around 2004. That time, there was probably it was probably a period around there where instead of it would have been Dubs versus Culchies, it could have been Tala versus the rest, because yourself and Robbie and Richard Dunn, and there was a couple of others, I think, from that era as well.
Graham Barrett. There was a good few lads from Tallaway that have been very fortunate to, you know, as I say, likes of Robbie and that was, you know, they've had some careers, but a lot of other lads that have, you know, gone under, probably a little bit under the radar, actually, not the Premier League, but yeah, a lot of good people from Tala, and I see the lad last night again from West Ham, he another Tala lad, you know, having an impact and playing, so it's great to see such a big area, Tala, and the amount of sports people that come for it is brilliant, you know, and one thing I always thought about Tala, obviously Shamrock Rovers are there now, was we never had a big sort of junior schoolboy club with the size of the area. You know, everybody was going off playing for Cherry Orchards and Home Farm and that. And that's probably the one thing we probably should have had a big junior football club in Tala with the size of the area.
Yeah, and maybe the Rovers situation is actually going to fix all that, and they'll be able to pool those players, because like it is kind of the heartland of Irish football when you think about it. Certainly from your era growing up to now. And in terms of like getting involved with the international setup at some point as a coach, is that all part of your future ambition, or are you going to let all that look after itself?
Yeah, just look, obviously I think that's anybody's, you know, everybody'd love to be involved, something like that, you know, getting onto the coaching side of things now, it's really hard, you know, it's the jobs are very hard to come by, and it's not like it used to be probably where you'd finish playing, you could just walk into a job. It's very hard to come across a job now. So as you say, with contacts and that you have, you got to use them when you get to that stage. And again, hopefully it can, you know, be around Notts County and that, and we'll see where we go. But I think international wise with coaching and things like that, I think it's a long way away. For me, I think I'd like to learn over here and you know, get involved at a club, and you never know down the road whether you know you could help out internationally. As I say, it's a long way away. I hear they've renamed you Michael Doyle in one of the WhatsApp groups. Yeah, the lads have a few photos flown around last night with bloody Neuer first, and then it was the old, you know, Rennie Oguita, the Colombian keeper, when he done that backflip. Did my face and all sorts of the keepers. They're coming in all night, and yeah, it was funny, you know, that even at half time, funny enough, one of the lads were like, bloody hell, you like that fella out of Mean Machine, the monk flying around there. So it was, we got a good laugh out, as I say, and it was brilliant. Michael, good stuff. Congratulations. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers, lads. All the best. Thank you. Good stuff. That's Michael Doyle. Goalkeeping heroics. The latest in a long line of Irish players to go in goals with their GA backgrounds. Niall Quinn was obviously the most famous. Steve Staunton did it, I'm pretty sure. Who else? John O'Shea. John O'Shea, yeah, good shout.
From an Irish perspective, anyway, I think it's almost like a rite of passage as an Irish footballer to have found yourself in a situation where you have to step in goals for a while. Text us in 0879 180 180 if you've got any more details on that as well. Now, it is 8:43 this morning. We're going to talk a little bit about Kerry football in a few minutes' time as well. And a reminder, of course, that OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. John Duggan is with us. John, good morning to you. How are you?
Jaron Owen, are you well?
Did you ever go in goals? Were you ever forced to go into goals as a...
Yeah, I was. Don't know if I was forced, but I would have gone in and not been very good. As I said on this show previously, I was the hatcher, I was the lodger, I was the guy who finished everybody else's moves and took all the credit. You've rebranded goal hanging very nicely there, but go on, I get it. Yeah, so that was what I did, and I have no apologies to make for it, even 20, 30 years on. No, I mean, scoring goals is the most fun you can do on a football pitch. Why would you apologise? Absolutely. I agree. And also being bad in goals is the best way not to get picked in goals again. It's like, you know, make bad cups of tea in the office. That's the best strategy that anybody can. Well, you know what? I'm not that generous. I'm not that generous to do that now, to make cups of tea to anybody. So you just have to make bad ones and no one ever asks you again. It's really easy. Yeah. I suppose, yeah. Too much.
can I just say, everybody will remember you as a goal hanger. Nobody forgets that. Years and years down the line, people will think back towards their childhood and they will think about how their games and how their silky moves and how their great playmaking was ruined by the goal hanger. That's all I'm going to say, John. Nobody forgets the goal hanger.
It's the best argument against the offside rule ever, to have that situation and to have that legacy, really.
It really is.
I mean, the silky playmaking is absolutely useless, Owen, unless somebody actually sticks the bloody ball in the bloody net. Where are we starting, John?
You do remember those silky players? They always had like the newest shirt, and they always had it like hanging out like over the shorts. So like a brand new. They almost had a new shirt every week. Silky, bit of glory hunting, and then I'd finish it, and they'd be absolutely raging. We'll start with the fact that I probably felt like Beavis yesterday evening, like get my head under the coffee machine to keep myself awake watching Man United West Ham. 1-0 win in the end for United. Scott McTominay scoring in extra time. Good to see the young lad, Mipo Odubeko, the 18-year-old, who was born in Tallaght, played for West Ham. 48 minutes he was on the pitch. Also the first ever concussion sub, Ryan Fredericks, coming on for Issa Diop. And Ole Gunnar Solskjær, as his wont, praised his team's character.
Of course, going through is always the main thing in the cup, and for us bouncing back after the disappointing last kick of the ball the other day. So very pleased with the mentality, how they've reset their attitude, and we're positive about going through.
So they're into the quarter. Go on.
Sorry, this slot is weekly giving us very fertile ground for me to ask Owen pop culture related questions, because you've made a reference there. Did you get it, Owen? Did you catch that reference?
Beavis and Butthead reference.
Oh, okay. So did you quick Google? You got it.
I should have. I was actually going to cross-reference it because I was like, old man yells at cloud is coming back with a bang right now. Jerry's going to be like, do you know who Beavis is? Do you understand what John just said?
Did you get it? Okay, good man. Well done. Congratulations.
And do you know who the great Cornholio is?
No. Who's that?
It was the Beavis character after he went a bit mad on coffee and started doing all these antics and getting done on the border in Mexico and everything. So we'll send you the YouTube link and you can have a lot of fun with it today.
Basically, Beavis with his t-shirt pulled up. That's it.
Yeah, over his head. I'm not going to do that now with my jumper because it'll probably burst. Bournemouth reaching the FA Cup quarterfinals, which was the second time in their history. The Championship side 2-0 winners away to Burnley for more quarterfinal places.
I think this is the first time this has ever happened in John Duggan's 25-year broadcasting career.
I can't believe Cornholio is the thing that brought the Jenga tower of professionalism down.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, lads. I'm sorry. When I speak about Everton and Spurs tonight, the kind of the professionalism immediately just descends on me like a cloud, because that's an 8-15 stars and be quite sobering. But 4 more quarter-final places up for grabs in the cup tonight. Manchester City away to Swansea from 5:30. 7:30 start to the Premier League meeting of Leicester and Brighton, and Sheffield United against Bristol City. And in the Scottish Premiership, Celtic going to St Mirren. Peter O'Mahony free to return for Ireland's final Six Nations game of the campaign against England. Handed a 3-game ban following the red card he received in last weekend's defeat to Wales. And he'll miss this Sunday's game with France, as well as the games against both Scotland and Italy. Simon Easterby, the defence coach, spoke to the media yesterday. He says there is not any need to bring in a new number 10 right now, with Johnny Sexton on track with the return to play protocols.
Billy and Ross have been with us, for the last couple of weeks. We're really comfortable with where they're at and what they can offer the team. And I think it's credit to them the hard work they're putting in when they're not necessarily getting the minutes with Johnny being skipper, but it certainly wasn't a thought of ours, partly due to the fact that we believe Johnny will get through those protocols and get back to playing.
Now, the world number 1 Novak Djokovic has beaten the American Francis Tiafoe in 4 sets in the Australian Open second round in Melbourne this morning. The third seed Dominic Thiem defeating Dominic Kepfer in straight sets. Serena Williams into the third round of the ladies singles. She beating Anina Stojanovic in straight sets. Both Petra Kvitova and Bianca Andreescu are out, as is Venus Williams, defeated in straight sets by Sarah Arani. And Padraig Harrington isolating. He's going to be okay having become the 5th player this year on the PGA Tour to test positive for COVID-19. The European Ryder Cup captain being forced to withdraw from the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, which starts tomorrow in California.
All right, we wish Park Harrington the very best of that. John, good stuff. Thanks very much for that. More from John a little bit later on. You can check out Virtual Insanity on otbsports.com. It is 8:49 this morning here on OTB AM. We want to return to the story that we've been covering over the last while on the show, and that is the involvement of Daniel Kinahan in big-time professional boxing, the role of MTK in all of that, and his continuing connections with MTK. On Monday, obviously, there was a statement read out on TalkSport from Daniel Kinahan, which was very interesting for a bunch of different reasons. We got into that yesterday from the crime perspective with Nicola Tallant of the Sunday World, and I'd point you in the direction of that podcast if you wanted any of the details of it. But we did want to find out what how this is playing in the UK, and I'm delighted to say Matt Lawton is with us this morning to talk to us about this. Matt, you've been covering this in the Times, and you've been covering this story. You did tweet yesterday that you were kind of you noticed that a bunch of media outlets in the UK didn't cover the story, and we're very interested in this because I guess ultimately our suspicion is that that statement on TalkSport was actually aimed at the UK sports audience in particular, and so therefore how the UK media covers this is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, the motivation for the tweet was, I realised, I read the papers every morning, and I realised that the Times were actually the only newspaper that carried the story, and I was slightly taken aback by it because I thought the statement was significant, extremely significant. The criminal side that you were obviously discussing with Nicola yesterday, and I don't know Nicola, but I've been avidly following her work since last June. I'd never heard of Daniel Kinahan until Tyson Fury's social media post. But the significance from a sporting perspective was the fact that after Tyson Fury said what he said last June, the messaging was consistent from the promoters to the broadcasters that this is not what it seems, it's not what Tyson Fury suggested. Daniel Kinahan is not involved in this. He is simply, and even MTK was saying this, he is simply someone that advises boxers. And then this statement comes out, and I'm still slightly baffled by the motivation for why he did it. I've heard certain theories that are quite interesting, one of which was just ego, just didn't like being described as someone who merely advises a few boxers and wanted to actually say, no, hang on a minute, I'm Mr. Big here. I'm the guy that's fixing these fights. I'm the guy that is arranging them. I'm making this happen. And I thought the most significant line in it was, I'm giving fight fans around the world what they want. But because the issue that has caused, particularly among broadcasters, is absolute panic. They're not saying very much at the moment, but I am told behind the scenes there are serious concerns about this because of the way it looks. Because when it comes to bidding for the rights for these for this fight and other fights, there is a risk now, a very obvious risk, that however many millions they're going to pay to broadcast these fights, particularly Fury Joshua, some of that money could be going to a suspected Irish crime boss. And ethically, particularly for a broadcaster like the BBC, that is a big problem. Therefore, my boss thought at the Times, that's a big story. We stuck it on the back page. Everyone else ignored it, and I found that concerning.
If we just tease that out, the broadcasters, the main broadcasters in this part of the world who might be involved in showing the fight would be Sky or BT. Now it's possible DAZN do it, but Sky are owned by Comcast, and they're a massive global brand, and I can't imagine they would be too keen to be associated with anything that Daniel Kinahan has been accused of in the Irish High Court, for example. It's all very clear and documented, and there's no denying that about his involvement in I'm specifically talking about the Fury Joshua fight here. Likewise, I can't imagine that the BT group would take too kindly to the corporate side of that being associated with whatever has gone in the background. So all of a sudden, that becomes a consideration.
Totally. And what I envisage is happening at the moment is you've got lawyers, you've got boardrooms full of board members, you've got reputational damage consultants, all debating what the hell they do with this situation. Now, I think what they're all rather hoping is that the authorities are able to accelerate a process that does seem inevitable, in that he is brought back to Ireland and faces some kind of legal process. But while that's not happening, there is this very awkward situation. I think awkward is an understatement. And I think, as I say, I've done a story this morning quoting Stephen Farry, the MP in Northern Ireland, and the reason I went to him, firstly, he's been quite vocal on this, and credit to him, but also because obviously the Panorama journalists who've received this threat are based in Northern Ireland, and he has said, he has reiterated this morning in the Times what the Irish government said last year, which is broadcasters need to think very carefully, like his words, before they give any legitimacy to a fight involving Daniel Kinahan. And I think it's a massive ethical issue. At the moment, they can possibly, when it comes to the crunch, when it comes to the question of whether you are going to risk losing subscribers, when you are possibly going to risk not making vast sums of money from people buying the fight, when it comes to the crunch, they might yet hide behind the fact that he has not received any conviction, he's not been arrested, and he's not facing trial. And I think it's a pretty woolly excuse, but that might be the side that they fall on when it comes down to making a decision. But for the BBC, you're talking about licence fee money. And to get the rights to broadcast this fight, you're still talking, even though you're not going to be anywhere near the sums that BT and Sky are paying, you're still talking hundreds of thousands of pounds for their commentary team to cover that fight. And I think there's a big question for them on this.
That then becomes a story of public interest in the UK, not that it wasn't already. And that's really interesting. I just want to kind of go back to what you said there, Matt, about there being no coverage on the back pages yesterday in the UK. Is part of that out of fear, Matt, do you think?
I don't know the answer to that at the moment. Look, I have slight concerns. I'm a great believer in solidarity among journalists. I'm a great believer in supporting other people's work. I was right up there with applauding Panorama last week, and I've really made a point of recognising the work that's been done by the crime correspondents like Nicola in Ireland, because I think it's incredibly courageous work, and I take my hat off to all of them. I'm really struggling with that side of it, because I think this is the most important story at the moment. You are talking about the biggest fight in British sporting history. You are talking about one of the biggest events in world sporting history. And there is suddenly this element to it. A suspected Irish gangster, threats to journalists. This is big stuff. This is important journalism. And my heart sank yesterday. I just thought, what are all the sports editors? And I've been a deputy sports editor. I was a deputy sports editor at the Mail. Not very long, so I don't know if I was particularly good at it. I didn't particularly enjoy it. I like being on the road. I like being a reporter. But I can't understand the thought processes that led to thinking this isn't news, because it is news. It's what we should be here for. It's the work we should be doing. And the bit that also worries me, if I'm honest, is that I think some of the boxing journalists who cover boxing in this country have known about Kinahan for a long time and turned a blind eye to it. And I find that sad, because I tell you what, if I'd been a boxing correspondent, I'd have been aware of that. I'd have been straight on the phone to the office. I'd have been asking to write thousands of words. I'd have been speaking to my colleagues in Ireland, and I'd have been saying, what can you tell me about this guy who's in boxing? He seems to be growing in influence. I want to write a piece about this guy. And I'd have done that. And it alarms me that it took Tyson Fury's tweet to actually activate coverage in the UK.
I think the other thing that happened as well is that Bob Arum obviously came out and publicly said that he'd been involved in helping to make that fight a reality. And the one thing that struck me, and we went through the statement a good bit yesterday with Nicola and with Kieran Cunningham the day before, about how false it was in parts. There may well be some truth to the fact that Daniel Kinahan is involved in organising absolutely massive fights. And the point you made earlier about getting the credit for the work done, that to me sounds very credible. And I think Bob Arum has said as much, and so many of the fighters have said as much as well. So, like, there's definitely that element of truth in that whatever part of the organisation or however he did it, he has been centrally involved in organising and will continue to be involved. That was the other, the future tense was the part of the statement that I found very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing was, look, I was aware that TalkSport had this, you know, the TalkSport are part of our company and a part of News UK. And I was aware that, excuse me, they had this statement. And obviously, when I first became aware of it and became aware that there was this line about his involvement in fights, I was asking myself, what is the motivation here? Because I knew it would cause major anxiety with the broadcasters. And I was theorising to begin with. I was thinking, you mentioned the manager, I thought, well, does he just not care about Sky and BT? Are they going somewhere else? Are they going to a different, you know, an overseas broadcaster? Is it just going to be on DAZN? You know, is there a strategy at play here? But then I heard, as I say, a theory yesterday, which does sound credible, which talks to what you just said as well, which is that it was just, he was starting to get a bit annoyed that he is just being sort of packaged as this guy that is standing on the outside giving a bit of personal advice to some fighters in the MTK stable. And I just think he just thought, now hang on a minute, you know, you're all benefiting from my hard work here. And this is, trust me, that's not my view. But I'm trying to get into his head here, and he has finally decided to break ranks and go against all the messaging that has been out there since last June. And as I say, it has caused major anxiety. And at the moment, the broadcasters aren't saying very much. BT have talked about being concerned by the allegations. I went to the BBC yesterday. They came back to me last night with a statement I found slightly surprising, given that one of their colleagues, at least one of their colleagues, is currently under police protection with his family. You know, this is serious stuff. You know, people are having to vacate their homes, from what I understand. And yet the BBC came back and just said, we don't comment on broadcasting rights. I thought, wow, is that it? You know, so it's not going to go away. But the problem is, and this comes back to the media coverage, if you're one of those reputational damage consultants, and I'm not saying for certain that they have been called in, but I would certainly be talking to people like that if I was in their shoes. But if you are one of those advisors on this issue, you'd have been delighted with the newspaper coverage in the newspaper yesterday. You'd been saying, well, look, there's only one paper that even cares about this. So look, I think we can ride this out. I think we can just press ahead, give the punters what they want, give 25 quid, watch the fight of the century, and we'll just deal with a bit of flack. But it's only the Times that are shouting about it because no one else cares. You know, they're covering the cricket and the football and the rugby, and there's not a line of it in the Daily Mail. There's not a line of it in other papers. To be fair to the Mail, they did run a story online pretty soon after the TalkSport statement went out. But yeah, it's. I think we have a duty to keep the pressure on. I went out of my way to track down an MP that would talk about it yesterday because Stephen Farry was actually the first British MP to echo what's been said in the Irish government already. I put the effort in yesterday to sort of try and maintain the pressure, but I'm pretty sure I'm standing alone again today.
that point about ride it out, the reputation management consultants, their plan A is like say nothing, let it play out and see what happens. That's, I think, built off the assumption that ultimately the fight fan who will pay the 25 quid, or if pubs are open, will go to the pub and watch it there, doesn't really care. Like, fundamentally, sports fans, it has emerged, don't really care about the owners of their clubs or about the nation states that are using their clubs to sports wash. Some small pockets of fans have resisted the Glazers, for example, at Manchester United, but ultimately not that many. No, it turns out.
No, absolutely. You've only got to look at the reaction of Newcastle fans to the Saudi deal not going through. That's a classic case. You're absolutely right. They don't care. As you know, I've been on your show before talking about doping in cycling. The fans don't care. They just want to watch the show. So yes, that is definitely an issue. The fans just want to watch the fight. Eddie Hearn basically said that last week. I thought, I generally think Eddie speaks very well on these things, but I thought it was an ill-judged statement last week when he sort of said this doesn't matter. Basically the world will keep spinning and this fight will happen. It's what the fans want. Nobody cares, sort of sentiment. But it's that will help. That will give them. That will encourage them to press on, particularly if it's just isolated journalists who are jumping up and down like angry people in empty rooms.
Yeah. Look, we're nearly done. The point about the BBC is very interesting as well, because they'll obviously have 5 Live will do radio commentary of this, and there will be a rights fee handed over for that, and at some point the taxpayer in Britain, through their licence fee, has to be happy with the fact that they're getting involved in this enterprise, and it looks pretty clear that this fight, if it goes ahead, will have Daniel Kinahan's involvement in it. Certainly that's what the main protagonist in Tyson Fury has said in the past.
Yeah, I think I think, put it this way, Daniel Kinahan's statement is nearly 48 hours old now, and no one has come out and said he's not involved, right? I think that's pretty significant. Look, I have some sympathy for the broadcasters here. This is not a mess of their creation. It's someone who's come into the game. Their relationships. BT's relationship is with Frank Warren and Queensbury. Sky's relationship is with Matchroom and Eddie Hearn. This guy is sort of on the outside of that. But the fact is, it is pretty hard to deny he is involved. He is pulling the strings. And for that reason, there is an ethical decision that's got to be made. And as I say, I don't envy, certainly, the heads of sport of the BBC when it comes to that decision. They were very twitchy about it. I got the sense yesterday when I was asking the questions. And I don't know what they're going to do. I think they're all rather hoping that before June there is a development on the Irish law enforcement side of things. That would probably do everybody a favour, but we can't possibly operate on that assumption because at the moment he hasn't been charged and he hasn't been convicted of anything, and the Irish police certainly aren't going to tell us when if they're planning to drop into Dubai to get him. So it's a really uncomfortable situation. But as I say, I think the overriding sort of theme of this conversation is it's an important story, and I think there should be more coverage of it.
Well, look, history shows, Matt, that any time that you have covered these stories, you've kept covering them, and eventually a lot of your colleagues follow your path. So fingers crossed it happens on this as well. Great to have you with us this morning. Thanks a million for making the time for us.
Pleasure.
Matt Lawton there, the Times chief sports correspondent, talking to us about how this story is playing out over the Irish Sea. if you want to get in touch, 0879 180 180 is the number. It is, 9 minutes past 9 here this morning. Still plenty to come on the show for you. We're going to hear from one of the co-authors of the Tiger Woods autobiography, biography, which is the source material for the new documentary series that we've spoken about on the show before. You can look back and get the podcast of that, but it's now out. It's on the Sky platform. You can watch it at the moment. Here's what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio for you today. At noon, it's Leaders' Questions with Caroline Lennon from AIR. That's Stuart Lancaster, his series about what it takes to be a good manager and a thought leader. Catherine Switzer and the 1967 Boston Marathon is OTB Gold today. If you haven't heard this interview, this is one of those sit in your car and listen to the whole thing interviews. It's on at 1 o'clock today. At 3 o'clock, our Legends interview is Jason McAteer. At 4, it's our retro panel, The Heyday of Meath GAA with Tommy Dowd, Bernard Flynn and Darren Fay. Dr. Harry Edwards on OJ at 6, and then live tonight from 7 o'clock, Keith Wood and Niamh Briggs are on Wednesday Night Rugby. Dermot Gallagher talking about Mike Dean and whether VAR has improved or disimproved a lot of football officials. It is, bang on 10 minutes past 9. Going to take a quick break. We're back with former Munster back row and Brive coach James Coughlan to hear the French perspective ahead of Ireland-France.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
OTB.
Don't shoot.
Oh, dinged it. Oh! It's a goal! It's a goal! 6-1. What a ball! Oh, no! 15 seconds left. That is amazing.
OTB live commentary. Never miss the action right here on OTB Sports Radio. Keep up to date with the latest scores on the OTB Sports app. The OTB Sports app. Live score updates straight to your phone.
Check out the Boyle Sports app today for details on which football match is getting the no-lose treatment this week. Plus, study the form with our Racing Post Spotlight before watching the action with free live streaming on all UK and Irish horse races. See the Boyle Sports app for full T's and C's. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie 18+.
Calling all builders, joiners, plasterers and dryliners. Need advice on the right materials for the job? Consider it done. You need them on site and in your hand. Consider it done. You want access to over 10,000 products from the leading construction brands without having to start up the van. Consider it done. There's another way of doing things. eTag. We talk with you to solve your problem and deliver what you need directly onto site. No second guessing, no seconds wasted. Click etag.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
11 minutes past 9 this morning here on OTB AM, the Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball. I'm delighted to say James Coughlan is with us this morning. James, how's it going? How are you?
Very well. How are you yourselves?
I was trying to come up with a good French greeting there, but
you're all right.
I'd forgotten.
Ça va, ça va bien.
Right.
Voilà.
How is life in France?
Life is good. We're ticking along nicely now at the moment. So we're after winning 6 of the last 7 games, so we're going okay. So just every week is a big week, so we just need to keep focused. We go to Bayonne this weekend, so it's a big game for us, and see where we're at after that. So, yeah.
Our timing is impeccable here. We could have done this yesterday and there would have been almost nothing to talk about apart from how brilliant France are. But the last 24 hours has been a pincer movement of French neurologists being asked by the French media about Sexton and concussion. Midi Olympique, I think, is the local newspaper down where you guys are?
No, Midi Olympique would be the big national rugby paper, basically. Everyone reads it. It's the big one. And neurologist on there this morning, former player from ASM. It's one of the more renowned ones as well, was saying, watching the video, it would be sad to see Johnny play this weekend. A bit surprising because normally doctors are kind of hesitant to make a decision unless they've seen the patient, because that's effectively what he's talking about as a patient. And Julie Marchois was asked about it. I saw Zeebs was asked about it. Raj was asked about it. So there was 3 or 4 articles in the paper this morning when I opened it up. So it's everyone's concerned about Johnny, but I don't know if they're concerned about Johnny or just putting the focus on him, to be honest with you. So.
Well, that's the $64 million question, I suppose. A lot of people getting in touch with us this morning is like, where the hell is this concern for Johnny Sexton's health last week? Why is it only just... Well, maybe we should take off our cynical hats just for a moment and go, perhaps people are beginning to wake up to the fears about our players. And it's not, Sexton's an easy example this week because he got taken off the HIA. He has the French know him very well. He was stood down for 12 weeks while he was there. What's your take on that and where we are in the game at the moment with all this?
Look, it's a contact sport. There's going to be bangs to the head, especially. I think the identification of it is a lot better than it was before, even since I was playing and even since I stopped playing. The fact that there's a medical doctor on the side of the pitch now and they make the call. I'm not sure how it works in the Pro 14 or the Six Nations, but for here in the top 14, it's a doctor who isn't associated with either of the teams. He has his own iPad on the side of the pitch and he looks at the impacts, and if somebody stays down, he'll say no. He'll come to our doctors regardless of whether we want to do it or not, or the player has said that he wants to do it, and he'll be the one that makes the assessment on the HIA. I was thinking about it. It was a bit funny, when you get a bang in the head like that. Sometimes it's slowed right down and everybody looks at it. But how many bangs in the heads of the forest taken at the back, at the end of the rucks, or at the bottom of a mall, or that isn't slowed down, isn't quite as highlighted as that one was. Shake their head for a couple of seconds and they get up and play on. It's a different one. It's, as Johnny's played with racing, everybody knows him here in France. As you say, he was stood down for 3 months because he got 3 concussions, which is the protocol, which is what should have happened. But it's becoming more highlighted, and it's something extra that player safety is a big part of our job now as well. And I think that the base of everything is the player needs to make the decision himself and with his best medical advice. Johnny is long enough in the tooth to know whether he can play or not. He knows if he's concussioned, if he's passed all the medical exams, he's passed all the things that he's supposed to have passed before he can be allowed play, and he wants to play. Then he's a 35-year-old man. He's not going to put his long-term safety in risk. He's going to play the match if he's able to play. If he's not able to play, he'll be stood down. That's about the size of it, to be honest with you. I think we shouldn't get caught up in everything that's been said and everything that's been written. I know he won't be. I know he won't really care about anybody else's opinion. He'll make his decision based on the advice medically and what he feels himself.
Do you think there is a bit of the French just trying to up the ante on Sexton? Because it's fairly easy, I'm sure, to get some neurologists to come out and say, hey, look at this, without actually, because they're not there, they haven't seen the cognitive test scores pre-tournament and after the match.
I don't know, is it the French? I think the paper just needed something to write about, maybe. And it's an easy one because it's so highly spoken about now in regards to player safety, in regards to what's going on. But I think, the French are a settled group. There isn't a whole lot to write about, maybe, and just the Mini Olympic has taken it on themselves to look after the health of Johnny Sexton. Maybe that's all it is. I don't know. I can't speak for them, unfortunately. So.
Is there a different attitude towards head injuries in France and in Ireland? Because I think that's probably one of the things that's being overlooked here as well, is that it's not just up to Johnny Sexton this week. It's up to the more than qualified people around him in the Ireland camp. And it just seemed a little bit unusual that the French people almost felt that they, not that they knew more, but almost that they almost had as much information as the Ireland setup did. So is there a different attitude towards it in the two countries from your experience?
Honestly, I couldn't say no because it's been a while since I've been at home in regards to HIA and packs and stuff. Here it's taken out of the players' hands completely. They have the 15-minute assessment with the doctor, and the doctor will say yes or no, that's it, and the discussion. Then they visit the neurolog on the Monday after they've been identified as concussion or not. If it's been identified as a concussion, they're off until Friday, no impact, no contact training until at least Friday, which will be 6 days after the initial, or 7 days after the initial impact. And at that stage, if they pass all the protocols at that stage, they're good to go. The majority of the cases, the lads wouldn't play that weekend, considering they haven't done any training during the week. Obviously, there'll be one or two that maybe would, but the vast majority of guys who've been identified for HIE and have been taken out of a game as a result of it wouldn't play the week after. When I was doing my stuff in Mark Ozzie, just the percentage of injuries after and concussion is for the next 3 games, it goes 60% higher chance of being injured, regardless of what type of injury it is. So, you know, the managing of the players for the next 3 games is crucial from a player safety and from a management point of view as well, because you don't want guys having long-term injuries as a cause of it. So I can't say a comparison or they know more or we know more or whatever it is. The protocols are in place and we follow them as we have to. It's taken out of our coaching staff's hands. It's the doctors make the call, and it's the same thing in Ireland, I would presume, with the Irish medical staff. They'll be making the call and they'll try and leave Johnny out of the decision as much as they can. And just to the point where Johnny says, yeah, I'm good, I don't have any symptoms, they have to follow what the advice he's giving them as well, and see where it goes from there, you know.
Let's move on and talk a little bit about the actual rugby then this weekend, James. Can you talk to us a little bit about how the French are setting up defensively? What's the strength? Like, obviously, we all know Shaun Edwards has gone in there. It's not great for the rest of the world that suddenly the French have Shaun Edwards to run the defence. What's been the impact of that? What are you seeing that's different from them in the Edwards era from before that?
Yeah, well, like their whole basis of the game, they say is jeu disposition. So they're playing without the ball. We had the SNC guy here with us last week or a couple of weeks ago, who showed us like how they program the sessions, how they do the sessions, how they implement this play without the ball. That you can see the likes of Willemse, for example, their second row that plays with Montpellier, is leaner now than he was 2 or 3 years ago. He's more able to get around the pitch. Shaun Edwards is very detailed. Sometimes anybody who's been coached by him will tell you the same, that that you can see that the impact that he's having, for example, in their analysis, that they'll know after 3 passes, you'll see the amount of time Fico will come out of the line, but the guys will know around him that that's what he's doing, because after 3 passes, then they're not left with the time to make the next pass. You'll see that they won't put the ball in touch a lot, because they're happy with their kick chase defence, that there's a percentage of tries are scored as a result of lineouts or scrum plays direct from first, second or third phase. So they're trying to avoid that. They'll keep the ball in the park and they'll wait for loose kicks, and then they're in their line. They've got a super back row. Olivier and Aldred are 2 of the best back rows in the top 14, and then they have a mix of 3 or 4 guys then in the next level. Cameron Woki in Bordeaux, you've Cretin, the start of the match against Italy, Gillette and Cast, and they have younger guys behind them as well, like Pisenti, who's in Pau, cover second row, back row. So these guys are all in and around. They know the system, and the impact that Edwards is having is that everyone is clear in the job they're doing, and you don't see guys knocking off on the inside. So like with the Robbie Henshaw, when he came around the back, you'll see French players would plug those holes a lot quicker than maybe what the Welsh lads did this weekend. And you can see the impact of him taking out of the Welsh setup that would have had on their defence as well. So as you say, it's difficult for the rest of the world, especially France are building towards the 23 World Cup. They have a big group of players now who all know the system. They all know the stability in the coaching group. So it's difficult to see Ireland, especially with the injuries of James Ryan and the doubt over Johnny, the suspension of Peter O'Mahony. It's going to be difficult to see Ireland winning, this weekend. Even in the paper, as I said, like this, it's now or never France. It's been 10 years since they won in Dublin, so they'll be looking to do everything they can to win this weekend.
That whole hoary old chestnut about, you've no idea which French team are going to show up. Now we do know, because they're programmed to do the same thing again and again and again.
Yeah. No, well, like it's just that. It's there's stability in the selection, which has never really been the case in France. It changed from week to week. They have 3 proper 10s now. Intermac, who's injured, but Jalabert has just stepped in as if nothing's happened. And then Carbonell beneath them, and then they have another one, Hastoy and Poe, who are all in and around the same level. At 9, you've probably the best 9 in the world at the moment. He does absolutely everything as he should. His kicking game is good. His pass is excellent, and then the threat he has with the ball in his hand. And Fico and Vincent in the middle of the park, who are big, strong men who run good lines, and you have dangerous men outside them with Teddy Thomas, and Fakato is still out, and he'll come back in and will add another dimension again. So they have strength and depth now, and as I said, there seems to be a real stability in their selection, which is important to build when you're building like they are.
When you're preparing to face DuPont, what is the message to the team during the week? How do you plan for what seems to be something you can't plan for?
It's just that you get your bases, your defense right. You get your plugs in around the ruck. You get your people in position as early as you can. A tighter prop against a 9 that is capable of doing what he's doing. You got to lift your hands up and say, Jesus, he's better than us. There's not much we can do with it. You know what I mean? You can't control him. You can't base your whole defense around him. You got to get the bases, your defense down in regards to your principles around the ruck, your spacing around the ruck, and then afterwards your 3-4 phases after the ruck, your work inside the ball, especially with somebody like him who's able to drift across the line and then just see a little hole, and then that's it. It's game over. He's in behind you, and once he's in behind you, they'll have the runners coming behind him. So Ireland, I think this week will be really focused on just getting the basis of the defence in place, and try. The first thing is to try and slow down the ball so that you're actually structured in your defence. So there'll be a massive job on the back row. Van der Fleer, was excellent at it. CJ. And Ty Byrne will obviously be looking to have a massive game again to get that ball a bit slower so that you don't give them those opportunities. The other thing I would say is that the kicking game needs to be spot on in your defensive game, because one loose kick, you see it Italy the weekend, one loose kick and he's in behind you, they're attacking, they're flooding in channels and they're excellent. So, I mean, you can plan for him, but sometimes you just got to lift your head out. It's the same, like they're comparing him to Messi here. It's probably a bit over the top for where he's at, but like it's just somebody who's got that X factor that you just really, there's not a lot you can do about it. If he pulls a rabbit out of a hat, that's just it. He's just done it, and you just go, congratulations, better. He did something amazing, and we'll just have to move on and keep working on what we can control ourselves.
Yeah. He might be more Maradona than Messi. He's got that body shape, and maybe he'll win a World Cup. That's the thing. It's
yeah, he might. Yeah, I think they'd have to be one of the favourites now, wouldn't they? At home, they're going to pick and choose where they play teams as well in regards to stadiums. Marseille is always a difficult place to go. I think they've never lost them as Marseille. So if they do end up with playing the All Blacks or something like that, I wouldn't be surprised if they move the matches around. And but look, you know how things are here. It could all change, but I think the structure and that they have now, Laporte and Galtier and his coaching staff is pretty much nailed down now for the World Cup. And outside Dupont, Intermac, and Olivier, if they went missing tomorrow, they're not the same team. You know what I mean? They would be the big ones that they'd be wrapping cotton wool between now and the World Cup, I would reckon.
Yeah, for sure. James, always great to talk to you. Really thoughtful stuff. Thanks a million. Continued success as well.
No problem. Thank you. Cheers.
James Coughlan there. Au revoir. Giving us some thoughts from Brive this morning. And we want to finish with a story this morning that's coming from Kerry's Eye, the newspaper that you're a columnist with. Kerry, your start. The backroom team has been finalised in Kerry, and there was a lot of speculation about this, right?
A lot of speculation. Paul Galvin, the latest to be linked to the job, and then announced last week, or not really announced, but reported last week that he wasn't going to be involved. That is definitely the case, and it's a promotion of sorts, it seems, for Maurice Fitzgerald. So the story there that he is going to become essentially forwards coach with Kerry over the next little while, which is interesting. I wasn't quite sure what his role was with Kerry up until this point. I know for a fact that he would spend most of the games up in the stands rather than being beside Peter Keane's side. But now he's got clearly more of a defined role. This clearly should have been something he should have been maybe brought in to do earlier, but it is something he's going to be doing from this season on. So he's going to have specific focus on the forward section of Kerry, which is a decent appointment. It's unclear who was doing this role before, if anyone was doing this role before, and what the knock-on impact is on the rest of the backroom team, because there has been just so many rumours in the off season. Like it's been a relatively short off season, and there has been a lot of rumours. As I mentioned, Paul Galvin was discussed before Christmas. There was tons of rumours about who would take the under-21s job. That eventually went the way of Declan O'Sullivan, and he's brought in somebody like Sean O'Sullivan with him as a selector. So there is more of a movement towards getting the best out of a golden generation of players. And I know he's a little bit older, but was Maurice Fitzgerald being used properly in the setup would have been one of the questions I would have had. And he's got more of a clear role this year. So this is interesting. And they've also brought in a couple of nutritionists as well, which is the other part of the story.
So obviously the speculation around Galvin after he left Wexford, that they might try and get him involved. There was definitely a debate when it emerged that Kieran Donaghy was joining Armagh, and there's obviously Micheál Quirke is with Laois. So there's been a bit of a brain drain, and this is an attempt to try and arrest that.
It does say in the piece exploratory discussions were held with Paul Galvin prior to Christmas, which is an interesting line. So something clearly happened here where there was interest in bringing Paul Galvin in. If there's no room for him there and Kerry GA really want him, there are other areas there. As I mentioned last week, there was definitely information that there was an attempt to get Donny Buckley back in at some level with Kerry. I think that ship has sailed and has long sailed at this point. So I think whatever happens in this current setup, Buckley will never come back. Obviously, he's employed with Monaghan at this point. They need to try and find that excellence in coaching somewhere else over the next little while. Who is going to be the next Donny Buckley? Maybe it is going to be an ex-player. Maybe one of these ex-players does step up and absolutely shoots the lights out and garners such a brilliant reputation as a coach. But you're right in saying that some of the best young coaches have definitely made their name away from Kerry at the moment.
And maybe there aren't enough jobs for everybody to go around because there are too many legends, and that's potentially always going to be the case. Like Peter Keane did come from the existing setup. That setup worked very well. There was a very successful underage team. He ascended to the senior gig. That seemed to make sense, you know. And does that mean automatically Declan O'Sullivan is the next manager?
No, it doesn't. But if he does a very good job, he's going to be in the box seat to get it. Like when you think about who else would have been in the mix, I found it very interesting that before Christmas that this job actually became available, because you had John Shugru who stepped away from the under-20s job, and you talk about that brain drain. That was he was part of that. He went and managed Laois a couple of seasons ago and then came back to Kerry to take the under-20s job, and you could definitely see a pathway for him to get the senior job because he's got such a brilliant reputation in Kerry, and he stepped away from the under-20s job. I honestly just don't know what happened there. There could have been anything. But yeah, no, that's the current situation.
We'll come back to that. Obviously, Kerry football, we're mildly obsessed with it on this show, as we should be. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We're going to hear from French star and Montpellier coach Philippe Saint-André on tomorrow's show. We'll have football, racing, our TV picks with Sue, and much more as well. Right now, though, we're bringing you Armin Kettian in conversation with Joe about the new Tiger Woods documentary, which is available to watch now.
The whole thing, and I'd never seen it before, is the footage of Tiger Woods interacting with the family of his first girlfriend as a late teenager. Man, he's happy and he's light. What struck me about it was the lightness. I've never seen Tiger Woods ever light. He's always, he's got a lot going on, and he's miming, playing the saxophone, and he's on his back and he's dancing deliberately in a dorky way, and he's laughing a lot and he's quick to smile. It's unbelievable footage. I'd never seen it before, and that leaves an impact as well, where you see, I don't know, a pared back original Tiger.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The first time I saw it, I'd never seen it. I saw one of the rough cuts of the doc, and I had the same reaction you did when he was on his back playing the air sax, and it's like Tiger unhinged, unleashed. He's a kid, and you're like, oh my God, I've never seen him as a kid, in anything. I never saw him in a team sport. Never saw him just laughing and being crazy. And I called Matt Hamachek and I said, where in the world? I said, did Dina, the first girlfriend, first true love, I said, did you get that from Dina? And he goes, yeah. I said, Matt, that's just gold. I mean, I can't even, people are going to just, that to me, that's one of those pictures that speaks 1,000 words. And you really that's where you start to feel sad, because you're like, oh my God, A, we got to see it, but B, that part of his life was hidden and few and far between. And then when you realize that, Dina was perceived as a threat by Earl and Tita, Tiger's mom, that they were worried that when they were together and when Tiger was at Stanford and Dina was in Las Vegas, that she would get pregnant and, that she would mess up, the whole, the plan, the grand plan was going to get derailed. And so, she was just summarily eliminated from Tiger's life, like a lot of people who became a threat. So there's a lot of, one of the things I really liked about the doc is, I think what both Matts did, was they took a lot of the elements that we were trying to bring across in the book and just elevated them in the doc in terms of, the price of genius, the cost of greatness, and all that stuff. And you see it in ways that that really just really hit home, more so than you can on a written page.
It opens up the broader question here about what's fair game. And I suspect that question is one you've faced a good bit over the last couple of weeks. And the word salacious has been thrown at the documentary for one thing. A number of different things jump to mind. So I don't know if the documentary was, well, it must have been consciously trying to illustrate this, but the role of the press and actually the awfulness of the press just loomed large over this whole thing. Like Neil Bolton from the National Enquirer, I'm sorry, he comes across in a hideous way, and he's like, this is American entertainment at its best, everybody, roll up. Yeah. And this is a man's life that they're, destroying in some ways. Or you see Jay Leno and how many mistresses is Tiger up today, and goes to the prop and he's up to 11. Or
women on The View that were, I was just like, you've got to be kidding me when I listened to that.
Jimmy Fallon, who's like tickling Donald Trump's belly a couple of weeks before, a couple of years later when he's running for office before the election. Jimmy Fallon's, they're all at it. And meanwhile, this guy's life is in a very serious way careering out of control. And the press, it's just horrific. And it's hard to phrase this right to you, but for some reason the book, maybe because if you're reading the book, it takes effort and it's in some way less accessible. You have to almost earn in some weird way the kind of nuggets in there, and you have to go through the book in its fullness, and therefore you have a deeper and nuanced view of Tiger. And so it felt in some way more acceptable. But somehow, for some reason, watching the documentary, and this isn't a criticism necessarily, but let's talk about this. Like, is this going too far? I feel like the man's privacy. Where do we have to just say, okay, Tiger, you've dealt with this. Your kids are of an age now. This is just too much. We're into just the horrible nitty gritty of stuff, and maybe we all.
It's a calibration, Joe. It's like a really, and I'm talking about a dial that you're touching and moving it, a quarter of an inch one way or the other in terms of, is this too much? And, to go back to the word salacious, that was thrown out by Mark Steinberg, who's Tiger's agent.
Yeah.
And some other people in the reviews, I think it's fair to say, also brought that up. And I got to tell you, this doc's a lot of things. Salacious is not one of them, in my mind. There were places, had you wanted to go, and there are hints of it in certain audio sound that you can, when Lordana Jolie is talking about being in hotel rooms with Tiger where there were multiple women and, we were his puppets. You could have gone down that road for several miles had you wanted to in that period of his life. And we consciously, and I know, and this was not my call, but I was asked about it. And ultimately it was the directors and it was Alex Gibney's call is, just how far down on that accelerator do you want to push? And our feeling was we didn't want to push very far, long enough and hard enough so people understand this period of his life where he's careening out of control. But that also comes with trying to understand, and I will never understand. I can't possibly understand, and I don't think very many people can. The Michael Jordans of the world, maybe the Tom Bradys of the world, pick the Messis of the world, and the great soccer stars in Europe. What it's like to be that famous, and to have anything and everything at your disposal should you desire it, especially in Vegas. And so I think we wanted to sit into Vegas for a little while to get a feeling of what he was experiencing there as his world was opening. but in the end is, could we have gone with more girlfriends and more of the salacious aspect of living multiple lives? I mean, 4, 5, 6 different girls at the same time. I don't know how in the world he was able to juggle all that, but in a weird way, one of the things that Rachel Yucatel said, that Tiger said to her, was, you have to learn how to compartmentalize. And if you know anything about sex addiction, which I now know more than I could possibly imagine I was going to know 5 years ago, as I mentioned in the doc, it's a form of pain relief, and it's not about the sex. It's like gambling or drugs or alcohol or anything like that, where you need that fix because your life is so screwed up in so many other places. There's only 1 or 2 places where you get any peace. The guy can't sleep, so sex is a form of pain relief, and I think inside the ropes certainly was a form of pain relief for Tiger. That was a safe haven for him. So, yeah, I mean, the media stuff, Joe, is just, it's appalling, as I said before, but to watch it unfold, and I think the directors did an amazing job of maybe staying there a little bit too long, but to really understand what this guy went through in that fall.
Yeah, well, that's fair, and maybe the documentary is part of that process as well. You're as a viewer, you're definitely at moments thinking, God, I've no right to know this about another human being, and so I feel a bit almost complicit or dirty here. But that's, I guess, a way of capturing the awfulness of what he went through. I guess another slight issue for a documentary like this, and Last Dance comparisons will be inevitable, it's 3 hours, 15 minutes. And I mean, you need 6, 7, 8 parts. So in 2 parts, 3 hours, 15 minutes, to give the downfall due treatment, it's going to have to take up an uncomfortable amount of real estate when it's 3 hours, 15 minutes. That's the tricky thing. I think some of that criticism wouldn't have been so pointed if this had been a 7-hour job and it had received the same amount of treatment. So that's a tricky one. Maybe you need to do a 6-parter here.
Well, no, we talked about that. I mean, it's all about decisions. You're making very adult decisions as to where are you going to go? How long are you going to stay there? What's the point of being where you're at? What are you trying to tell the audience? And I've watched the doc now, the final cut, probably 5 or 6 times, and I see different things every single time from the director's perspective, knowing what Matt were thinking about. And it's not just the 2 Matts. It was, there were other producers that are very experienced, and not Alex Gibney notwithstanding. There's probably a core group of 8 or 9 people that have real chops when it comes to making documentary films, and 3 editors that are looking at the same thing all the time with one paramount, I think, feeling in mind is why are we doing this? What message are we sending? Why are we spending any time in this area of Tiger's life? I mean, they interviewed, I think, 30 people overall. 18, I think, ended up in it in one form or another. And there were, I know, a half a dozen people that I really would have liked to have seen in the film. But you're right. It would have been a 5-hour, 6-hour film. And it would have been multiple parts like The Last Dance. We've talked about, I mentioned to you before we started that, there's a scripted series now in the works. And it'll be at least 6 parts, at least 6 hours. And I now have seen the pilot. I've not seen the pilot. I've read the script, and that's still being worked on, but it's pretty far down the line. And it takes a very different tact than the doc. And I think it will spend time in areas of Tiger's life that will be ultimately revealing in other ways about his personality, and about the price of genius, and about just some of the cruelty that he could show at times to people.
Well, because for me, I mean, the book, and I still just so recommend it to people, the defining aspect of the book for me, maybe it's a strange thing to say because it dwindles by comparison with the scale of the downfall. But actually what me and the guys on our golf podcast here ended up talking about more often than not was the casual rudeness of Tiger. day to day, the rudeness, you know, the exchange, or as it was, the non-exchange with Mark O'Meara's wife was talking to the woman who Tiger, you know, stayed in her house at Augusta for years, and she introduced herself, and Tiger, hi, it's my house you were staying in all this time, and just blanks her and says to Mark O'Meara's wife, you know, we want to know when we're leaving the house or whatever. And for me, you know, that real Tiger versus where is he now? You know, has he genuinely softened? Was almost one of the real cruxes of the book. And again, probably because we're talking 3 hours, 15 minutes, that aspect of Tiger isn't explored and shown to the public. Like, you could conceivably watch that documentary and not know Tiger's kind of modus operandi day to day. And that's look, when you're doing 3 hour, 15 minutes, you've got to start with, well, what are we leaving out?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's a really astute observation in terms of what are we leaving on the floor? We know we have to go here, 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 and here, and here.
Yes.
Those are the pillars and the posts of the dock. We have to do that. But, I mean, Earl's personal backstory is so rich, and you understand why Earl says so much of what he says when you understand that he grew up in racist Kansas in the 40s, in the 50s, wasn't allowed to sleep in the same hotels as the other members of his baseball team, was one of the best players on that team, and was subject to all sorts of racism. Then you go into the military, where the discrimination and the racism is even worse in many ways. And what does Earl do? He does 2 tours in Vietnam, and he's a Green Beret, and he becomes a lieutenant colonel. And then when he goes to the Navy course, where he is basically shunned by all the other military personnel, they call him Sergeant Brown, and he has to stand up and say, my name is Earl Woods, and it's actually, to you guys, it's Lieutenant Colonel Earl Woods. And he kicks their ass in golf, because that's one of Earl's ways to basically say, you know, F you to all the people that think he's the servant. So the richness of that story, and then Tiger's mother's story, and the fact that Earl was a bigamist, he was married to another woman when he married Tita. I mean, yes, from a dramatic standpoint, and that doesn't even begin to touch on Peggy Lewis, the woman that you mentioned from the Masters. All she wanted was a thank you. An acknowledgement that she was actually standing there after they destroyed her house in Augusta. I could name John Merchant, another guy who was really responsible for Tiger's raising so much money in Connecticut and across the United States for Tiger's amateur career so he could travel around the country with Earl. But when Nike came in with their $40 million, and $1 million of that was going to go to support minority golf in America. And John, who broke the color line at the University of Virginia Law School as an African-American, was on the USGA's executive board and was going to control and help minority golf in America. He and Earl had one too many cocktails one day, and Earl was talking about he wanted the $1 million so he could do it. And John was like, there's no way in the world you're getting the $1 million, because I know where that $1 million is going. And that was the end of John Merchant. And he was, to Tiger at that period of time, a second father. And like, you talk about getting wiped off the chalkboard, that was John Merchant. Never spoke to Earl or Tiger again. And I could name a half a dozen other people. Stevie Williams, like that in the doc where he's talking about, well, I knew I wasn't going to be his caddy anymore, but I never thought I wasn't going to be his friend. So that kind of cold-blooded, and then to listen to Tiger in the press conference where he goes, well, you know, we got to move on. Things are different, you know, moving on. Who does that? I don't know. I mean, there are times when we were writing the book and I would call up Jeff Benedict, my co-author, and I'm like, I really don't like this guy right now.
I know.
I mean, he's just hard to take.
And I remember saying to you in our conversation about the book, and people can podcast that chat and get a fuller feel of things, because there's no need for us to reiterate things. But I remember reading the book going, I mean, this is such insight. No one, you know, this is brilliant. And yet the worry here is, like, where are the people who have seen other sides to Tiger? He can't be all bad. He can't be this terrible. And obviously they didn't want to cooperate with the book or the documentary. And so, you kind of have to go, well, these are the people who've been cut. Not everyone's been cut. We're not going to hear from them because they'll be cut.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, that inner circle around Tiger is probably, if there's a half a dozen people that are still in that inner circle, Brian Bell, Mark Steinberg, his agent, people from Nike that have been with him for a long time, but you can count them, I bet you, on the fingers of two hands for sure. And there's a reason they're still there. It's because they haven't said a word outside of Team Tiger. Yeah. And, that's the MO. And people have said, well, Tiger didn't cooperate. And that's absolutely Tiger's prerogative. He could, and frankly, Joe, I didn't really need him to sit down for the doc, and we didn't need him for the book. By that point in time, I felt like I had read everything of significance he had ever said, including every book, every press conference. And I was like, okay, what are we going to get that's going to be any different? Because it's Tiger's narrative in the end. Now, I do know he's working on his own memoir or biography. And if I know the person that's doing it, if I'm correct, and I believe I am, he's an extraordinary collaborator.
The rumor is it's the guy behind the Agassi book.
It is. And that's what J.R. Moeringer. And that's what I've heard as well.
Okay.
And if it's J.R., he also did Shoe Dog with Phil Knight. He was the ghostwriter for that. If it's J.R., it's going to be a really interesting read, one way or the other, because I know he's got the ability, much like a Gary Smith. One of the things that Gary Smith, one of the greatest sports writers of the 21st century, 20th century as well, Gary said, I don't write about the leaves, I write about the roots. And if JR can get into the roots and explore those, I think it'll be a fascinating read. I really do. I'm just not sure Tiger's going to go there because it just isn't, that's just not in his nature.
Breaking the habit of a lifetime, wouldn't he? And
and I don't know, that's hard to do. I mean,
it sure is. Not least when, another thing, I don't know, are we all becoming more prurient as time goes on? The way kind of society ebbs and flows. But even when he won the Masters and you see his kids there in real life and they're hugging him, and then you see Charlie Woods playing at the golf tournament and everything, suddenly they're no longer like the faceless kids who, well, geez, one day they're going to grow up and Google the past. It's like they're there. And that's another reason why a part of me is like, geez, right, we just got to let this rest now. We just got to leave.
What did you think of that? What did you think of it at the PNC? Because I looked at it and I had mixed feelings, to say the least.
In terms of?
Just Charlie being in the spotlight,
Yeah, I mean, it was
Are we
funny.
Going back to that same world again? And Tiger was very protective of Charlie. Wasn't interviewed. Charlie seemed to really enjoy it. He certainly displayed a remarkable maturity for an 11-year-old.
I just
went, like, how do you go to 8th grade? Or what is 6 and 5 and 6? Yeah, it's like 6th grade. How do you go to 6th grade and go, oh yeah, I'm Charlie Woods. Oh, Charlie, I saw you on television, with your dad. And it's like, I don't know. It's like, are the sins of the father being, now on the son? Much like Earl, man, that's something that I'd want to lay down in a couch someplace and talk about, because I don't know.
I don't think so. I mean, Earl is a different stratosphere, I'd like to think. And that tournament wasn't actually on TV. A problem with that is Tiger's just so damn famous that it was like Twitter, it just blew up. So every little snippet of Charlie went almost viral. I suspect Woods thought, you know what, okay, there's going to be a little bit of fanfare, but this is an unbelievable experience I'm going to have with Charlie. And so screw them all. I'm going to do that. I'm going to have fun and appreciate, like, I mightn't be able to swing a club. He's had back surgery since. I mightn't be able to swing a club in due course. So like, it's, like I'd recommend the documentary and people will get things out of it. Like, other stuff does benefit from being on screen. For instance, the apology. The apology is not something from the book which looms large. You read about it and we've all seen it. But then suddenly in the documentary, when you get the different camera angles for the apology, what jumps out more than anything, it's like a lingering memory from the documentary, is not so much Tiger, which is kind of horrific enough that he had to do this or that he chose to do it. It's the camera shot of the crowd, and it's like Tim Fincham and it's like his family, and nobody can look at him. Nobody can look. Everybody has just their eyes to the floor. And it's not out of disdain for Tiger. It's just out of sheer embarrassment at the awfulness that this is happening. Why am I sitting? Why is Tim Fincham sitting there?
Well, I tell you something. The call went out. And I'll tell you a story that, I haven't told many people, but Mark O'Meara was asked by Mark Steinberg, Tiger's agent, to show up at the press conference in support of Tiger.
Right.
And Mark said, Steinberg said to Mark O'Meara, who's like the older brother to Tiger for so long, Tiger would really like you to be there at this press conference. And Mark said to Mark Steinberg, well, if Tiger really wants me to be there, have Tiger call me and ask me. And that was, I think that was part of Mark's job, was to fill that room with supporters. I go back, and I think if I'm right, my memory serves correct, there were like 12 million people around the world at some point in time were watching that press conference. And the public humiliation of having to do something like that. And that was, we could never quite get to the bottom of who was responsible for it. I mean, Ari Fleischer, who was, press secretary for George Bush and was brought in as a media consultant. And I know in talking to Ari that a lot of the things that he was saying wasn't being listened to because they thought they were smarter than he was. Ultimately, I think it was a bow to his advertisers, that they were just, particularly to Nike. But so many of the advertisers jumped ship almost immediately, like Accenture, which was a huge sponsor for Tiger, go on, be a Tiger in all the airports and all the ads and the posters that were there. I think it was an effort. It was, a damage control for sure, but the damage was done. And I got to tell you, there were a lot of people to this day, and I don't think they're necessarily wrong, that a press release that said, this is a private moment. It's between me and my wife and my family, and I am not going to say another word about it. In some respects, to go out and do what he did just threw more gas on the fire.
Yeah, for sure. I think today he would have sent that press release. Like, it wouldn't have been as expected. It was just so awful. And the documentary and the book and this conversation is part of the machine. Like, let's not separate ourselves from it.
No.
The machine next to this very human person making these very human mistakes, the machine looks every bit as reprehensible.
Yeah. And I've had people say to me, how can you do this? You're taking advantage of Tiger. You never should have done this book. You're exploiting Tiger's life. And I said, if I wanted to exploit Tiger's life, I wouldn't have spent 3 years of my life on this book. I would have done a hit and run job, found some salacious material, thrown it between two covers, and walked away and not cared about what that damage that would have done to his reputation or my reputation. But in the end, when Jeff and I signed on to do this, we signed on to write the definitive biography of Tiger Woods. And what is or isn't, or there'll be somebody else that does something, I know I could not have given any more time or effort. We laugh about the fact now that, Simon & Schuster was fabulous with us. Ian Marshall out of the UK did just a wonderful job. I'm looking at it, staring right out here, William Hill. We were one of the finalists for the Sports Book of the Year for William Hill, which is as prestigious an award as you can win in the UK. And, we walked away saying, we were working for minimum wage in the end because of the hours that we put in. I transcribed every single interview myself because I wanted to listen to what the people were saying, not looking at a transcript. So I'm not asking for anybody. It's not a pity party or anything like that, but I'm just saying those are the kinds of commitments that we made to write something that we hoped would stand the test of time. And it has.
Yeah,
and that's all you can do. At this point in time, at this point in my career, I walk away from this book saying I could not have given anything else. And if somebody wants to criticize it, they have every right to, but I also have the right to defend what I did.
Yeah. I guess to round this off then, as somebody, there are a few wise old souls in the documentary, but somebody makes the point that Woods winning at Augusta in 19 was not redemption. It's not a redemption story as such because he could win a golf tournament again. I mean, it's amazing that he could. But if we're to kind of look for some kind of redemption, him as a person, and maybe you're into the realm of just your hunch here and just working off the tidbits we get publicly, but where do you feel he is? Because I think when we spoke 2 years ago, or whenever it was, the sense kind of was, it really does look like a new Tiger. And I would say that has continued. It's been that and more of that in the last 18 months to 2 years since we spoke.
I agree with you. I think he's in the best place he's ever been in his life, whether you want to call it emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. I think that the Tiger that I'm seeing, with the engagement with Justin Thomas, the engagement with Rory, the engagement with, Xander Schauffele, his crew down in Florida that he plays with a lot, they see the side of Tiger, which is the side that's been hidden from the public for so long. I mean, he's so smart. Tiger's really smart, and he's funny as hell when he wants to be, but he just doesn't. That has never been part of his public personality. So that coming out, I just keep going back to the word humanity. I think he's as human, with human emotions. That hug of Charlie at the end, his arms in the air, the feeling of just the roar of the crowd again, appreciating it, maybe in a way he never did before because he never thought he would be back to that moment again. We never tried to moralize. I never tried to get on the high ground and look down because God knows, I'm in no position to do that. And I think it's wrong, personally. Redemption is a funny word. You mentioned it because that was a conversation we had a lot about at the end of the doc. Are we doing the redemption story? And then in the end, Pete McDaniel, the African-American writer who was very close to Earl, who was really sort of the conscience in many ways of the doc, because he was channeling a lot of what Earl had hoped for Tiger. I think, he's human just like the rest of us. I think is that trite? Maybe, but not when you look at it in terms of the architecture of the story and the arc of the story. For Tiger to even just get back to some level of joy and gratitude, appreciation of what was happening.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved